Detroit is Different is where you get information, artistry, history, music, and even comedy. Detroit is Different, a home for the culture of Detroit. Visit online at DetroitisDifferent.com today.
All right, welcome back. Welcome back to the Detroit is Different podcast studios. This is an interview I've been waiting on for a while. We've been planning it for like a couple years now. You know, sometimes stuff happens like that with Detroit is Different because Detroit is different. But I think people should know this lady is, as I call it, one of my big homies. And so many things in culture, community, and so much more. Also, one of those people that definitely sees me color outside the lines and say, Khary, you know you ain't supposed to do it like that. And I'll be like, I'm going to do it like that. And she probably right most of the time. But part of the arc of learning is doing things the wrong way. And I'm not encouraging to do things the wrong way. What I'm saying is the best lessons I've ever learned is when I lost a lot of money, lost a lot of time, and, you know, it sticks out in your mind. It's like, don't want to do that one again. Don't want to do that one again. Still learning from a couple of them. But as I say, she is definitely a friend of Detroit, but Highland Park's own. And y'all know we a stone's throw from Highland Park here at the studios. Funny as ever. And really, the comedy just kind of oozes out from storytelling. So y'all going to get a lot of laughs, but a lot of real game and so much more. Coco, how are you today?
What's happening? What's happening? Detroit is different.
Yes.
So when you color outside the line, you doing a different thing. No, like for real. Like you got to be different. In order for you to know that something is supposed to be done a particular way, you got to do it another way to figure out that the other way don't always work.
Yes.
And then sometimes doing it the other way kind of works, and you like, okay, I'm going to take what I know with what I just learned and put it together, and it's a win.
And that's kind of like the arc, but still, you know what I'm saying.
I know.
I'm one of them kids. You know, I'm one of them kids.
I know. I have a daughter, and y'all the same person.
Definitely.
Different genders, but the same person.
All day.
That
all
generation,
day.
that 35 to 45, 30 to 45. Yeah. Y'all gonna buck the system.
All day.
But I love it.
You know, we got to touch the stove, even though we know it's hot.
Yes.
Even though we know it's hot. Then we come back and we say, hey, what happens if a friend of yours burnt their hand on the stove?
Yeah.
And then you get the mama look like, what you mean friend of yours?
Yeah. So it's funny. It used to be touch the stove. Now is touch the air fryer. You smell that? You smell? Did you know I was down here putting some salmon in the air fryer? You gonna come down here and tell me, "Oh, this hot"? I just got it out the air fryer.
Hilarious.
It's the truth. The air fryer, the toaster oven, and all that. So it's still you got to push the envelope.
I love it,
and I respect it and appreciate it because what's to say all the stuff that I learned from my generation is always right. It always got to be done that way.
I know a lot of coloring outside the lines of your era too, because we was looking up to y'all. Like I mean, I got that line in my song, like one of my songs. You know, I always talk about family.
Yes.
So like at one point in time, I would be on stage rapping, and it may happen soon because Tawana Honeycomb Petty is talking to me. But like I remember how cool my cousins was, especially around like those Prince concerts and stuff like that. And you see and you sit with grandma and hear the stories of curfew being broken, decisions and mates
climbing out the window,
all of it.
You know, your friend coming to your house and changing her clothes.
Yes.
And all of that stuff. You got $1 and you buy some Wet n Wild lipstick and it's bright red. And, you know, something about Wet n Wild that if you don't scrub it off your lips, you still going to go home looking like a painted harlot with that red lipstick on.
Hilarious. Yeah, all of it. So let's start with the classic Detroit is Different question. Yo people, when did your people make their way to Detroit, HP area?
Oh, my goodness. So, okay, this is a real... Okay, I'm finna give you a
let's go there.
Legacy breakdown.
Lesson.
I'm finna give you the whole legacy breakdown. So my mother, her parents were from Birmingham, Alabama.
Okay.
Out around the area of Birmingham. So it was Fairfield, Inslee, those cities around Birmingham.
You ever been down there?
I have.
Okay.
I used to spend a lot of time down south with my grandparents. So, and then my And this where it get great. My father that raised me, he too was from Birmingham, Alabama,
Oh, so that same area.
the same area. But here the hint come, and this is confessions kind of sorta. My biological father, if you will, we're gonna throw that in, or the other father, the bonus father, was from Louisiana,
Wow.
Bastrop, Louisiana.
Where is that?
It's near Monroe. It's in the northern part of Louisiana.
Okay.
So I have Alabama roots and all of that. Then I got Louisiana roots. So it makes my family kind of different and unique in they look. So I got family members, like I got aunts and they passed on that were like 6'4", 6'5", red hair, green eyes, and freckles. And they used to call them Geechees or Creole or whatever. So I got that deep in me. And then I got the whole Alabama thing deep in me. So it's really interesting when I see people and have a conversation. I'm like, they could be related to me. Because they look like,
Yo, people.
yeah,
And-
yeah.
Okay, so now let's go to what was it that brought them up from Alabama?
Work.
Okay.
It was the big migration. People were moving from the south up north. My mother was a nurse. She went to nursing school in Alabama, and then she moved up here because everybody kind of migrated here.
And that's what they call Detroit.
Yeah,
That's some Southern-
Detroit. Or
Detroit.
up north.
Yeah, up north.
We going up north.
City folks.
City folks. So they kind of migrated up here and lived a few places before we finally landed in Highland Park.
Okay, HP. And I don't know if people understand like the history of HP, but
They
like
don't.
a lot of these cities were designed around working in plants.
Yes.
So Highland Park most definitely. So like you'll have a factory, you'll have churches, you'll have schools, you'll have subdivisions, hospitals, like all centered around basically how the factory would work. And at one point in time, for a long period of time, Highland Park, the where the Model T was first developed and manufactured by Henry Ford plants, or Fords, as if we really going old school says, was one of those cities definitely designed to basically keep people working. Dearborn, Inkster for black people,
River
Ecorse,
Rouge,
River
all those
Rouge.
cities.
Like
Yes,
a lot of these cities are designed basically to get people work. Hamtramck, and Highland Park was a city that, you know, even to this day, like the culture and what exists, as I always say, like people went to Hollywood to be stars. People came to Detroit to like really find a way for their family. So you have a different arc, and that's still one of those communities where you go to the right house, and I mean, people will be there for like, I don't know, 6, 7, 8, 9 generations or something.
And that was sort of the thumbprint, because my mother was a nurse and she worked at Highland Park General Hospital. That was the hospital I was born in.
Okay.
So a lot of police officers that were in Highland Park, they worked as orderlies or whatever in the hospital, and before they became police officers. And then once they became police officers, if something happened in the line of duty, that's where they brought them to Highland Park General. So it's so much history in Highland Park. Highland Park was a self-contained unit. We had our own water and sewerage department. We had 2 hospitals. We had Highland Park General and Detroit Osteopathic Hospital. We had a community college.
Yeah, one of the best colleges
yes, absolutely.
in the nation.
Absolutely.
And also the architecture of it, even to this day, is like it's some German architecture in that community college and the library that are like world-renowned people. And the reason I know this is because I had German in high school.
Okay.
And my German teacher would have people visit. And when they visit, they would always go to the community college and the library in Highland Park.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So we had everything you needed. You had the library, you had the community college, and like you said, highly accredited nursing program they had at the community college. We had a quote-unquote regular high school, then we had an alternative high school for the young people that just couldn't kind of, get into the system of education in the other high school. At one point, we had a teen mothers program for young ladies that were pregnant. So either way, whatever direction your life took, you can get an education. We got one of the largest Chrysler dealerships that has been in Highland Park for 70 years. We had, like you said, the Ford plant. So everything was right there. On a Saturday afternoon or a Saturday morning, you could get up, and it was only 2.2 miles. So we had all the grocery stores. We had an A&P. We had about 6 grocery stores.
You had that Sears where
I
I
used to
always
work
got a
there.
winter coat. We put it
Yes.
on layaway in the summer,
Yep.
and then slowly but surely, when winter came,
You had that coat.
I had that coat. But yeah, I remember the grocery store my grandmother that we're recording in was
Okay.
that A&P, so we
Yep.
would go to that A&P. Other things I think about Highland Park that are unique, as much as we talk about the Black Power political base of Detroit, Highland Park was also one of those places forward thinking where a lot of black folks like, so I don't know if people understand this structure. Like, so we know how talented our people are.
Yes.
But oftentimes, especially like in the 60s and 50s, we never really got the opportunity to really have a chance at bat for political power, like really holding those positions. Highland Park, running concurrent with Detroit, was in that same
Absolutely.
vein, in the sense of like some of the people that orchestrated and laid the blueprint for even how the Highland Park public schools would be, how the libraries would be, how the systems would be, water, energy, sewage, like these were people that like worked for years and were more talented than
Yes.
people that were their superiors, but they were black, so they never got the opportunity. So when they got the
Absolutely.
opportunity, it was like, oh, we about to do this.
They
We about
showed
to
out.
hold this down.
They showed out.
Yep.
So one of our mayors in Highland Park, who was a mayor, I think he served 4 or 5 terms,
Mhm.
Robert Blackwell.
Mhm.
He was a Republican.
Mm-hmm.
We had a black Republican mayor.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because that name from that Blackwell family, you got judges, you got lawyers, you got everything. So you still, even now, when you mention that name, it resonates because people are like, I know some of them. It was just one of those families in the city of Highland Park that grew or whatever. And it's a lot of those families that are still
there.
they still in the city.
Mhm.
A lot of my friends left, and then now they moving back because they like, you know what? My parents had this house. I moved away and rented this house out, but now I realize I want to move back to the city. And I want to move back to Highland Park, and I have been on this search to find the ideal home that I want.
Okay.
And it's been kind of challenging because
I mean, it's
the
it's
color scheme
other-
changing.
The color scheme changing, and also these are the other things like and we've learned it in Highland Park, Detroit, Oakland, DC, name a city where black people at. Atlanta, like
Philly, all of them.
yeah, when black political power takes hold, usually a lot of the resources that bolster it leave too. So you have to be creative about how to keep this up. But like, so, and we'll talk about that because here go another one, and it's not even open anymore. But I don't know if people know this, but Highland Park High School, really from like, I want to say like maybe 85 to like 93, was one of the best high schools in America. And when I say America, I mean like for real, like America, like kids, it was.
We can go back, because we can go back to my generation
Mhm.
because before we moved into the new
The
high
new building,
school,
yeah.
the new building, we had the old building, the one where the college was connected. So you had a high school on one
Yeah.
side and the college on the other. So a lot of people would graduate from high school and literally go right across the hall to a college, a community college, and nursing,
Mhm.
whatever you want to take up. When they built the new high school and we went over there, we had people, and you are absolutely correct. Highland Park was one of those premier high schools, like you say, okay, where do I want to go? And it was Cass Tech and other schools, but Highland Park was in the rankings, and you got
Yeah.
people that would use another address
and
to come
want
to go
to
to
come
school.
to Highland Park.
Absolutely.
So like, and so people know, and I know it's gonna be a lot of cast technicians throwing a water bottle at they screen right now, but like Cranbrook, Birmingham Grove, it was like Highland Park was on that level
Yes.
of high school. Like, so people would be like, man, I can't get in Highland Park. I guess I'll go to Cass. Like, seriously, that was
Yes.
a reality
Mhm.
for a stint.
It was.
You know what I'm saying?
Especially, yes, when I was in high school, it was the reality because Highland Park was not a Detroit public school.
No.
We were a part of the Suburban Athletic Conference.
Mhm.
So we competed on a suburban level when it came to athletics. The only time we competed against Detroit was during the tournaments. So a lot of people came because we had everything. We had everything that you thought. We had field hockey, we had tennis, we had golf. We had so many systems in place in terms of education. We had co-op, so you could get a job working at the Chrysler headquarters or IRS or whatever. So Highland Park was the place to be.
Yeah. And in that, how was it? How did your mom take to it? Why did she stay in HP? Do you think she wanted to move to Detroit at one point in time? What was the thing that anchored her there? Because you still Highland Park is a city within a city for everybody outside of it.
Yes.
Highland Park and Hamtramck are cities within the Detroit city limit.
Absolutely.
But why do you think your mom stayed there as opposed to like even the suburban calls and all of that stuff? Because as a nurse, I'm pretty sure that's the other thing.
She could have moved.
Yeah.
So single parent. I remember in 1967 when and they called it everything else. Well, I'm gonna call it a riot because it was a riot. I was 4 years old, and at that time, my mother was working at Harper Hospital, and we lived in a 4-family flat on the corner of Pilgrim and Edward. If you know Highland Park, you could look it up. We lived in a 4-family flat, and my mother kept saying, "I don't want to raise my daughters in a 4-family flat. I'm gonna get a house." We said, okay. So when the riots hit, everything was kind of trippy because they would come through to get to Woodrow Wilson. They would cut up Pilgrim and go to Oakman. You know, the back route. And I remember my mother went to work and they had them stay at work. And she was like, okay, I got to go home and make sure my kid's okay and then do all that whole thing. But they needed everybody, nurses, doctors, everybody, because there was so many people getting shot and hurt and coming in the hospital. So I remember my mother came home, got me and my sister together, called my aunt, and took me and my sisters to my aunt's house. So my mother had lived in other places, but we lived in that 4-family flat in Highland Park. And then, and this is a true story, this is crazy, my mother used to play the numbers, right? What black family didn't. My mother played the numbers, hit the number for quite a bit of money, and she bought the house on Moss that I grew up in. So up until like 4 or 5, we lived in this 4-family flat. My mother bought this house. We went over and looked at the house, and she bought the house. And it's so funny. Every year around that same time, she'd be like, yeah, I got to play. I can't remember the number. That's so funny. I got to play my so-and-so because that's the number I hit when I bought this house. I'm like, okay. So she moved us to a house with a backyard, with a basement and all that stuff. And I was excited, but it just was like, oh, this is more work. This is more stuff I got to clean up. So I don't think she even thought about the suburbs. I think she was like, I'm just going to move a few blocks from where I am because everything is where I need. Everything is right here that I need. So as she got older, she would have a conversation like, oh, it's getting kind of different over here. I should have moved so-and-so. I said, well, you still can. I ain't finna do all that. I'm like, okay, whatever.
Okay, and let's talk about that. And then when we think Mall Street, I think Super MC family and grandparents on there.
Yeah, they was on the other side. We was on the other side.
Okay, yeah, and it's like, boy, oh boy, don't walk up on that house unapproachable because you will have a canine awakening.
Yeah, oh, it's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot of families that had. Yeah, we had dogs.
Okay, yeah. It ain't the dogs of today. It's the
Doberman pictures, Bouviers, the collies, the dog. And you know what? I posted that on Facebook. Whatever happened to the Bouviers, the collies, the Doberman pictures? Whatever happened to those dogs? Like, did they take a Doberman picture and breed it with a Bouvier and come up with a pit bull?
I don't know.
I never saw a pit bull when I was growing up.
Hey, I know. You
where the hell they come from?
Trick. Like, I come in peace. I come in peace. So with that, in this community, especially you being there at that time, you're watching it as families are
leaving,
are coming, some and then some leaving.
Yes.
What was it like as far as like for you as a child? Were there a lot of other kids there? Do you have like a lot of relationships with friends on that block? What was it like for you?
I learned a lot about bartering and roles and just things that went on. So it was a family that lived across the street from me, and I remember, she had children, so I would play with her children, and we had children on the block. We went outside. Mm-hmm. We was outside all day. We came inside smelling like outside. We drank water out the water hose. Mm-hmm. Ice cream truck came down the street, and if you had some change and somebody else didn't have some change, well, you didn't get what you really wanted, you would get something else so somebody else could get something. I remember that. I remember the swimmobile. Now, if y'all, I'm explaining the swimmobile. The swimmobile was a semi truck. It was bigger than a semi, and whoever created this was a genius. It had water and chlorine and stuff in it like a swimming pool. And it was a ladder that you climbed up to get into the quote-unquote swimmobile. Here's the thing. It would be umpteen kids in there, and it was always like a lifeguard sitting there watching the kids. When you got out that swimmobile, if you didn't immediately rinse your skin off, that chlorine was so strong, you couldn't go in the house and sit down because you was itching. Literally, like, you got out the swimmobile, went to the water hose, and rinsed yourself off before you went in the house to take your swimsuit off because the chlorine was so strong. I remember the fun wagon. That we had a fun wagon that showed up and it had games, hula hoops, checkers. It had chalk to play hopscotch with, and it was block the street off, and you could actually play in the street. We had a fun mobile, and we had a swimmobile. So we spent a lot of time outside, going to the store, and interacting with the kids in the neighborhood. So for me, it was good, but then I got bullied too. That's a whole nother story. Because I was taller than everybody else and bigger than everybody else, I got bullied. I had to fight though. It was and it was funny. It's funny now. The girls would pick on me and the boys. And I had to fight both of them.
It's unique. It's unique you speak of that on a couple of levels. And I want to also add this too. As we learn more through these Detroit is Different stories, the arc of even how like all things impact all things in culture. So there's a lot of like bookmobile, swimmobile, as people would call them, the watermelon man.
Oh yeah, and the man that sold the wooden chairs. Remember the wooden chairs on your porch?
It would
the
be
meat man.
And
the milkman. Don't forget the milkman.
The driving, because things are more mobile, obviously here in Detroit, impacts so much of the other culture around Metro Detroit. So it's like, we're going to put it on wheels and we're going to get it out and distribute it.
Yep.
Like even at the start of what became the Charles H. Wright Museum started with Dr. Wright saying, okay, black people need to know more about black history.
Absolutely.
And that became him taking this, and Jamon Jordan can speak more eloquently about this.
Yeah.
Him taking a trailer of artifacts and some books and
to
then
the community.
driving through the community and delivering this. This is the iteration that becomes the Charles H. Wright Museum, because first it was just Dr. Wright saying like, okay, 1 second, let me take some time on the weekend because
and
these
do
black
this.
people don't know nothing about black people. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that is what leads to a lot of things, but a lot of things go on wheels in Detroit because of the auto industry connected to Detroit. That also is why we don't have a public transit system like that.
Because everybody had a car. So it leads us to, a lot of people say if you build it, they will come. No, they brought it to you.
Yes.
The milkman bought you your juice, your milk, your eggs, your butter, your ice cream. The watermelon man bought you the watermelon. The meat man, depending on which one it was, because one of them had bowl meat and the other one had real, good meat. And
that's like the grocery stores of today.
yes. Because there's a lot of food deserts in a lot of big metropolitan cities, brown and black people. So he would bring you the meat. And then everything else that you needed was brought to you, even in terms of how you moved and got around. So we would walk and go to the store, but you would go to the store to get the bread and stuff like that. But everything else in the community was brought to you. And then it started to kind of just dissipate and just go away. And, we became, oh, that's not healthy. And, oh, that's this. And blah. So we kind of got away from that whole thing. The only thing I think that still remains is it's still the milk truck that delivers. I don't remember what company it is, but they do deliver milk and juice. And the ice cream man.
Yeah, the ice cream man is like, yes. So like in certain areas, the ice cream man was probably like, of what could come down the block, like it was probably number maybe 3 or 4 of what you want to see. Whereas now, we see the energy behind it, but the ice cream man would see the swimmobile and be like, should have got over here faster.
Yep.
So, but that was back in one era.
That was in
that era. I kind of want to pick back up the point when you were talking about being bullied because
let's talk about that.
most recently, I was at Fluent Spirit of Detroit opening. Shout out to Fluent and all
Hey,
he does.
Fluent, all y'all.
And it's a brother I met, Soulful, that performed. Heavier set dude. He actually does at what I'm calling it what was 90s at Glendale and Woodward every Wednesday night.
I know exactly where the spot is, yes.
And he gave a piece about, he was like, I was always the fat kid, and this is where things were as a fat kid.
Yep.
And I was a big kid too. But like with it, like the stories go, like the way he did it, and the right poets, like black people put seasoning on everything.
All that.
Creativity. But the way he spoke about, he was like, okay, you're going to play football. You need to eat all these nuggets and contests that people would be like, hey, can you eat this? Can you eat that? Like he spliced in so many other layers of things. And some of this, even when I think
the whole finish your plate. You going to eat all that food on your plate. Not good, but go ahead.
Yeah. And then he was like, and then it caused to the other thing where he didn't feel like eating in front of nobody at all, where it's like, okay, now I'm really hungry, but I'm, I got.
You going to eat all of that? Damn. I'm like, okay, I see it.
So what was it like? Because part of it, we know in the hazing and I guess the dozens of it, but it can become hurtful and harmful to a lot of people at times too. What was it like? What was you dealing with? How was you dealing with it?
Okay, so part of me being bullied and having a quick mouth. Oh, I had a mouth. I would destroy you in a couple words. And that made me, so, okay, we're going to back up. I remember, and it's interesting, I would fight. Like, I would let stuff build up. But when I fought you like a gladiator. Because I wasn't finna chase you. I wasn't finna do all that. When I got a hold of you, it was really going down. So I remember one young lady, I was in the 5th grade. And my teacher was, I remember her, I'm looking in her face. Her name was Carolyn Sue Brown. And Miss Brown was a very beautiful, mocha-colored sister that wore braids in her head. And sometimes she would have a short fro. And she drove I think a Triumph Spitfire. It was convertible. And she was just articulate and charming and dressed nice and everything. And she I would go to her because she was thin, but she knew the plight of being teased, right? So I remember one day, I was in the bathroom in the 5th grade, and this young lady jumped up on the door in the bathroom, because I always went in the bathroom that had a door on it. She jumped up on the door and spit in the top of my head, right? I finished using the bathroom, washed my hands, walked back to the classroom, and whooped her ass bad, really bad. And nobody saw what she did, so to them...
It looks like you just assaulted
I just snapped, yeah. So my mother was called, and we went to the principal's office, and I remember somebody saying, something wrong with her. Me. Something wrong with her, because, and it was nothing wrong with me. You all didn't see her. And I literally was explaining to myself, I said, she spit in the top of my head. And she was like, no, I didn't spit in the top of your head. I still had to spit in the top of my head. I never wiped it off. So I said, I can't spit in my own head. So that was the evidence. So let me show you how life is. Later that same day, this young lady's brother had a crush on my sister. So, and I didn't know who he was. So he came to our house, and he was talking to my sister, and I was ear hustling. I was in the dining room or living room window listening. And he said, yeah, my mother got called today because this girl got into a fight with my sister. And my sister said, what? Because my sister was really short. My sister was a gladiator, too. She would defend me in a lot of stuff. So anyway, we're going to come back to that. So my sister said, well, what happened? My sister said the girl just came in the classroom and started beating on her and said that she had spit in the top of her head. And I'm listening now, because this is what happened. So my sister said, well, what? Because my sister knew what had happened.
Yeah.
So my sister said, well, what was the girl name?
Time out. Let me stop this. You see why she's a great comedian. She can tell a story. But I also want to point out, you see also at a young age the Highland Park that runs through their veins because she kept the evidence.
I did.
The sister is listening without responding as if she knows what's up too.
She knew.
Because she getting more detective information. And this is at a young age. So you know what I'm saying? Like most people don't pick up on game like this until you maybe like in your 40s.
Oh, no.
Possibly 50s. You may not even get it. But like if you grow up in the right hood, as people say, like, oh, you don't learn nothing. Yo, when you grow up in the right hood, it's a lot of game you soak up even as a child. You know what I'm saying? But continue.
So I soaked that game up. So my sister said, well, what was her name? And the guy said she had a funny name. And he said it was Irene or something like that. And my sister said, Ingrid. He said, yeah. How you know?
And now is when you can tell his street smarts is not as
no. he was there on the porch trying to get at my sister.
I know.
He was, and my sister was beautiful, dimple. She played in the band, honor student, all that stuff. So my sister was real cool, and at this point, I want to run out the house like a dog and just
I know.
My sister said, "You know that's my sister." He told me for real, and so he stands up. He said, "No, for." She said, "Yeah, that's my sister, and your sister did spit in the top of her head and all that stuff." So he started pleading the case, and my sister was like, "You might want to go. You might want to go home."
Mm-hmm.
He was like, "Well, no." She was like, and she was real calm. And when somebody's voice get low, I need y'all to understand if you going through an altercation and argue with somebody, and their voice drops, you need to get the hell on.
Yeah.
My sister was like, you really need to go home.
Mm-hmm.
So it was, and she came in the house, and we talked about it again because, once again, she protected me.
Mm-hmm.
And she had been taught, so this is an interesting connection. At that time, she was taught that by her being 10 years older than me, she had to protect me.
Mm-hmm.
But I was so much taller than her. She was short, but I was taller than her. So for the people, and you know where I'm going, for the people that grew up in the community, the older child or the more responsible child was taught, if something happens, you have to do X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
So my mother kept a rifle behind our den door, shotgun behind the den door. And because my mother would work afternoons or midnight sometimes, she taught my sister how to shoot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And she told my sister, she said, listen, if anything happened, now this is my mother, if anything happened, Ingrid, I need you to reach up on the ledge, because my sister couldn't reach it, and get the cartridge and give it to your sister. And when she shoot, make sure you standing behind her. So I'm 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, and this is a lesson that my mother is teaching my sister. If somebody come through the door, fill in with the door and ringing the doorbell, and you say, who is it? Or you peek out the window from the dining room or the living room and you can't recognize who it is, and they trying to get in the door or whatever, you know, that's what it was. And call me. After you do that, call me. I said, okay. So I never played with the rifle.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a toy. But if you went to a lot of black homes then, there was always a rifle that was present in the black home. It was some kind of weapon present for you to defend yourself.
I like that we're in this zone because I rarely get to talk about this because you also give a lot of other gems in the mind. Khary correlates things. And in this same correlation comes back to principles that I believe are always just within Black spirit. Like certain things in the psychosis, shout out Dr. Amos Wilson and everything he has with the blueprint for Black Power, and just talking about some of the experiences we have. And I usually tell people, and we have these conversations, I love my people because sometimes the stuff that can be present that we deal with, it can be overwhelming.
It's
and
traumatic.
A lot of times we check out because of the like when people say mental health in the Black community, the reality is that this whole design of America and the way that Western civilization functions is toxic shock to most Black people. Mm-hmm. For us to function with fluidity and no problems in it, you almost that's maybe more of a sign of insanity because we got to be connected to family. We got to be connected to friends, extended family, community.
Got to have a spiritual relationship. All those things, all of that.
It takes a lot. So with it, part of it is like usually what we call more so like street principles, how I say it, and even like what rappers and like what I connect to and a lot of brothers connect to with rap and sisters, but really what it's going back to are like African-based principles, meaning like handshake deals, contracts and agreements and insurance. That's part of this Western civilization. And I'm not saying it doesn't play a role because we're inside of it.
Yeah.
But I can definitely tell you this. On them African villages, if I'm a part of a village and I say, hey, Coco, I got 100 goats for you in exchange for your 100 crops.
Okay.
And a flood happens. Ain't gonna be no insurance where Coco gonna come to me like, hey, a flood happened, so we can't figure it. She now will go to the other villages and be like, we better get Khary and his village his food.
Because we got to get them together.
If a disease happens to my cows and I can't turn like, hey, disease going on now, Coco. It's like, no, I got to go to these other villages and make good on it. And it's handshake deals. Hence, like, that's like that same look. This the gun.
Yep.
Don't touch it. Like, it's a certain sternness, and people say, like, won't you develop other systems and this? And I'm definitely not saying, I know all my gun safety people are like, no, you still need child locks. And yes, you do.
You do for this generation.
Who the person is.
Yeah.
But at one point in time, just due to how community function and how our collectiveness function, which I think was closer to, like, African-based principles, closer to blackness, some of it is just, like, certain things don't have to, certain things don't need to be said that's already understood.
Yeah, what's understood don't have to be explained. So that whole gun thing, my grandparents and my family that lived in the South, my granddaddy had a shotgun behind every door.
Yeah, I was gonna say guns all over down south.
And he even had a little. This gun he had was so rusty, it was a shame. But I never wanted to touch it because that was not part of one of my toys that I was supposed to play with. And when you speak of the goats and the land and all that stuff, the people on my block where I grew up. So if my mother went to A&P and they had fryers, and that's when we bought a whole chicken jaw. We didn't buy no chicken cut up. We bought a whole chicken, and you cut that chicken up, neck, back. Okay. It's a whole thing on TikTok now where this lady is having a conversation. She was like cutting up a chicken. The lady was like, why would you cut it up? It comes cut up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my mother would go and they would have fryers on sale for 29 cents a pound. Limit 2, right? My mama got 2. My sister got 2. I got 2. I got the money to pay for it. I'm standing in line at A&P with this bag, and of course, it's blood dripping off the bag because that's what it was.
It was real chicken.
It was real live chicken. So my mother would get her 2 chickens. I would get mine. We walked to the car, and we put the chickens in the bag. When we got home, my mother said, "Take these 2 chickens, cross the street to Miss So-and-so, and she gonna give you a bag of potatoes and a big bag of rice." So there I go, deet, 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 deet. My mama told me to bring you the chicken. All right, let me give you the rice. So here I come back across the street with a big-ass bag of potatoes on my shoulder and a bag of rice. Boom. Then my mother be like, okay, take these 2 chickens down the street, and Miss So-and-so gonna give you such and such and such out of her garden. So my mama said, bring the chicken. Yeah, I just picked these greens, and blah, blah, blah. So there I go walking down the street with a handful of greens in my hand with dirt and everything. But we lived. We survived. When you would go to the bakery and you would get all the bread, and my mother would be like, okay, this going in the freezer, but take this over there, and they're going to give you this. We bartered. We exchanged stuff.
But
we did well doing that.
The other layer of this is that creates community.
It does.
So like on surface, hence Western civilization systems will look at it like supply meets demand, hence the arc of capitalism.
Yeah.
Supply meets demand, and that's what you want, the good or the service barter. I mean, the transactional exchange of the good or service. But through community now, what you're doing is now, because they saw you deliver the chicken.
Mhm.
When they see you up on the street and you may need a ride home and it's a snowy day.
Yeah.
Come on, that's I don't know your mama name. That's what's her
Queen
name?
daughter.
Yeah,
Girl,
come
get in this
on,
car.
Get in the car. Yeah.
Yes.
And it's like, are you doing something you ain't supposed to do? And it's like,
Yes.
I'm get in the car. Come on.
Yeah,
Because
yes.
now that community exchanges. And then furthermore, you see them and you look out for them as well.
Of course.
So like the interchange of resources, which is more of an African-based principle. And when I say African, it also was like natives obviously did
Absolutely.
that too, and
And
others. But
a lot of cultures
Yes.
had that same
yes.
mindset, and it
Mhm.
was survival, and this is
Mhm.
what we did. Because on my block was very diverse. We had a family that was, I can't remember. I don't want to say what they were Asian, but I can't remember.
Or if they were Mongolian.
Yeah,
or
I couldn't remember,
Chinese
but
or
they were a part of the
Japanese.
barter
Mhm.
system too.
Yeah.
So they would cook stuff and bring it over. They'd be like, telling my mother she got to try. They'd be like, okay. My mother would be like, well, what? And they would explain it. But they were a part of the system. The lady down the street who had a son that had special needs was a part of the system. And sometimes her son wouldn't always cooperate, and she'd be on the porch calling him and looking for him. And then we all had to go out and look for him.
Mhm.
And he wouldn't be nowhere but in somebody's yard
Yeah.
or picking the apples off somebody's tree or whatever. Then we had, and the community extended beyond that, because if somebody came to cut our grass,
Mhm.
one of my bonus daddies came to cut the grass, and it was somebody else needed the grass cut. You're not going to cut this person grass and leave that person grass looking crazy. So he would go over there, knock on the door, and be like, listen, I'm going to cut your grass, but the kids got to come out here and rake it and sweep it up. And she'd be like, okay. And if they had to cut 2 or 3 yards, so be it. But it created a connection. It created a conversation, even to the point where everybody didn't have a house phone.
Mhm.
So if everybody didn't have a house phone, somebody would come to your house and use your phone.
Mhm.
Miss Queen, can I use your phone? I need to do, yeah, baby. And they come in there and use the phone, and using the phone turned into a whole conversation. So now they're at the dining room table having a whole conversation and some dialogue. It created a sustainable community, and we talked.
Yeah.
That conversation over the fence, when you out on Saturday and you picking your greens and you doing all that, it created the I'm leaning over the fence and
Yeah.
we having a conversation. Or I got to run to the cleaners. You need to ride with me? Okay, I'm going to A&P. Yeah, can I? It created such a bond and such a cohesiveness that I'm not going to say it will never exist again, but I remember
What
that.
that felt like.
I
And
remember.
let me be clear about this too. Even through all of that, because we can romanticize it, it would be conflicts. But people
yeah.
dealt with the conflicts in a way
Right
within
then.
community.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
here's somebody, and I guarantee your mom probably crossed paths with my auntie, my Aunt Shirley. That was a nurse, RN for years before she passed, and always she was like I'm sure your mom was. She was like the pseudo doctor for everybody in the family.
Baby,
Anything
no,
happened, I'm
what?
calling my like, hey, it seemed like I fractured to this day. I fractured my hand playing football with Jolly, with my homie Jolly. Like and then I'm like, what's going on? It feel like it's like, oh, that's broken. I'm like, do I got to get it fixed? She was like, nah, it'll fix. But like, if you ever shake my left hand, the fracture, all known from Aunt Shirley, it's a fracture, but it's cool. But I don't want to re-break it. She was like, yeah, it'll be cool. Now
It's funny, Khary. It's so funny you say that because my mother, and this was before the whole
ain't no web. This is pre-WebMD.
pre-WebMD.
Yeah.
There were rules involving narcotics, but it was certain things that you could get that you
Mhm.
can't get now. So everybody knew my mother was a nurse.
Yep.
And then it was somebody that was a school teacher, but they come knock on the door, and they be whispering or whatever. And my mom be like, okay, yeah, and
Oh no, I'm saying this camera.
okay.
You go.
So my mother, they knock on the door and have a conversation with my mother, and my mother come upstairs in the medicine cabinet and get some and go back downstairs and give it to him. It might have been antibiotics. It might have been pain medicine. It could have been whatever, but everybody knew that my mother was a nurse. And then everybody knew the lady across the street worked at the plant, and she would let everybody on the block know when the plant was hiring.
Yep.
And then the lady that was on the block that was a school teacher, she would get all the pencils and notebooks and all that stuff. So we was a self-contained
In
unit.
community.
Yes.
I was gonna add this more so from the medical lens with my insurance, because she straight up told me, and things have changed,
Yes.
especially where doctor things have changed. In this, my aunt would say when she started, like in the early '80s, especially like crime scenes that would be horrific involving family,
Yeah.
you'd have like a detective, you have some homicide units, you have the I forget the people that clean up, and you have like a nurse there, like the paramedics. And this is how they say it. Look, like something crazy, like I say, craziness has always happened.
Yep.
But like a mom or a dad shoot the whole family, it will be written up differently back then. They would say, this is how we gonna say it, just in respect for the family.
So
Nowadays, things, because news travels faster.
Yeah,
Even
yeah.
when I was watching, I love that. What's that? The Showtime show with the Magic, the Lakers series Showtime on HBO, talking about the Lakers run.
Right.
And it starts with Magic Johnson walking through the hospital. And I was thinking to myself, like, okay, I remember that day vividly when he was on the Today Show, but I was thinking, in today's world, if Magic Johnson were to be diagnosed with HIV before he even walked, before when they leave a blood workplace,
Yeah.
somebody done got that to TMZ, and you know what I'm saying? Like,
and they
things
losing
have
their
changed.
job because that show a HIPAA violation.
I know
So-
it is, but that happens so often
Absolutely.
nowadays. Whereas before, sometimes people would put the between
word,
the nurse and
yes.
everything out of the respect for the family. It's like, okay, these people ain't got parents no more, so we don't want to say, okay, the mom and dad had a shootout with each other. We gonna say something else.
We protected it was a guarded situation for a lot of reasons.
Yeah,
For insurance reasons. It was
That too.
just it was a lot of reasons that, and my mom went to nursing school in the 60s. In the late 50s, early 60s. Yeah, I was born in 63. So things were so different. So it was that, just what you said, the whole conversation and how things moved. And when an ambulance came to pick you up, sometimes it might have been a nurse and a doctor in the ambulance. So it's just watching the Rubik's Cube of life, if you will, turning. And once you turn the colors, it's hard to get those colors back. And sometimes you can't get them back.
And more, just like with teaching, more independence about, like, we know you ain't got no insurance. So it was ways that they could still
Absolutely
give you a solution where you sometimes had to put the rest of the, you had to put the
together.
rest of the puzzle
You
pieces
gotta put it together.
But it's like, hey, Johnny, come on now.
Yeah.
Get out of here, but we going to give you these 2 pills. You know what I'm saying? Get yourself together.
Yeah.
And you need to holler at Miss Andrews, because she said Chrysler going to hire next week.
Yeah.
So you can get in, and immediately when you sign up, get
at 16, because you could work in the plant. You could work in the plant at 16.
Mhm.
The teachers lived in the neighborhood.
Mhm.
You could look, if you were an educator, we could look in the phone book and see your name and your address and call your house.
Mhm.
It just, we
community function differently then.
Yeah.
And this still gives the lens of a lot of where your storytelling comes from. So let's get into more so the
Okay.
comedy.
Okay.
Because I see you as such a great storyteller. And I'm guessing you have great storytellers in your family. How did
My
you
grandparents.
get into, like, how did you recognize that, like, because you were snapping back on people for bullying. So you were always quick. And to
Yes.
me, like, you knew how to crack. But when did you recognize your storytelling was something people laughed at, and painting the picture of places, people, and things in a way that others could find the humor?
I've always been, so my father used to always say I had the gift of gab.
Yes.
He always told everybody that, because I would talk to anybody. Grocery store, the lady could be 80 years old, I'm talking to her. Kids, I always talk to people, and they would always tell me stuff, and then they would say, well, what was you talking about? And I could go back and recant the whole conversation that I had. So I found that to be kind of interesting, and I started to kind of research it, because it's called an eidetic memory when you remember things and you remember all the details. Like you remember what scent was in the air and if somebody was smoking a cigarette and if they had on perfume. And you remember not just the visual details, but you remember in with the terms of your senses, what you smelled, what was going on. So I had that kind of memory. So I could create a situation and fill in all the blanks. So I would tell stories to my friend. They'd be like, what color was the dress? I said, the dress was yellow and it was like taffeta and all those things. And when I learned that, and I had an amazing teacher and teachers that taught English, but I was a great writer as well. So I would write stories and poems and all of those things. And I just kind of learned that I had this talent and this gift for just creating stuff. I never thought about being a comedian. I wanted to be a singer. That was what I really wanted to do. And I never really thought about being a comedian, but I was fascinated with comedy. The Richard Pryor, Moms Mabley, George Carlin,
Probably Joan
Flip Wilson,
Rivers.
all of that. That snarkiness or whatever. So I would go back in my head and just think about stuff. I remember my mother told me, and this story still resonates in my spirit, and I got to share the story. My mother used to tell me, she would say, the kids of this generation wouldn't have made it when I was a kid. My mother was born in 1930. She said they wouldn't have made it when I was a kid. Y'all talk too much. I said, what? She said, y'all run y'all damn mouth. Y'all talk too much. Y'all couldn't have made it. She said it was 7 of us. And my mother told a story of, it was a woman that lived in a community. And she had gotten into it with a white lady. And the white lady spit on her and she slapped her. When she slapped her, she ran, right? And we just talking about intelligence, not the formal education. Just so the lady ran, and she came to my grandparents' house down south, and she was telling my grandmother and grandfather, "I just slapped Miss So and So, help me, because I know they gonna kill me." And my grandfather and grandmother took this woman in their house and hid her. Now they went to this woman's house with the dogs, and they had the dogs looking for her. My mother said her daddy went outside and sprinkled something around the house. And when the dogs came, they couldn't smell this woman's scent. This woman was behind the door. And my mother said, so I'm going to do it from my mind, how I interpret the story. The chairs came up and said, Mr. Scott, we looking for Miss Maybelline because she didn't win herself and slapped Miss Susie, and we need to talk to her. And my grandfather said, so I don't know what you're talking about because I ain't seen nobody. My mother said all 7 of them was standing there looking at this man. And the man said, well, do you mind if I talk to your children? And my granddad said, go ahead. And they said, have you kids seen anything? And the ones that could articulate was like, no, sir, we ain't seen nothing. This woman was behind the door hiding. So my mother said, after the man left, they couldn't go back to the house. So they went to different people in the community and said, we need some money. And my mother said the people that my grandfather could trust and tell, like, hey, we know what so-and-so is. Where is she at your house? No, my grandfather never said this woman was at my house. And they said, well, where? She ain't there. They collected enough money. My grandmother made her something to eat, dressed her, gave her some of her clothes, put her in the car. Now, mind you, we in Alabama. My grandfather drove this woman to Tennessee and put her on a bus. Drove her to Tennessee, put her on a bus. And my mother said she kept saying, Ma, when Daddy coming back? He'll be back directly. And, okay. He'll be back directly. And she was like, well, how long? She said it seemed like the longest time her father was gone. He drove the woman all the way to Tennessee, dropped off, made sure she got on the bus, and came back. And I asked my mother, I said, have you ever? She said, I never saw that woman again.
Yeah.
She got on the bus, went to Chicago.
Yeah. And that, first off, as we say, dynamic story. Like you see, like being a storyteller, and deep story that goes into the Black experience, and a very common story, sadly, in an American reality, because
Oh yeah.
that was punishable by death. The worst thing is those same realities happen now, but we need to be very smart and keen about how we operate when situations like that happen.
Yes.
So now I really want the rich story of your first time
Okay.
grabbing that mic as a comedian.
Oh my gosh.
What was it, and what led you to do it?
So my good girlfriend, rest in peace to Latifah. Her and her uncle they was running a bar downtown called Scruples.
Where at?
It's where the Greektown Casino was located.
Okay.
So, well, you know where Floods is?
Mm-hmm.
If you going north on that very next corner when you cross the street, Scruples sat right there.
Okay.
So everybody that knew me knew I had a sense of humor.
Okay.
They know we could all look at the same thing, but I would see it totally different. So I always gave people nicknames. So if I saw somebody and they said, "Oh, that's so and so," I said, "They got a face like a goldfish."
That's hilarious.
And my friends would be like, "We can't sit with you because you don't know how to act."
That's funny.
And I would whatever, like, my mind didn't see what other people know what they saw. I would see something else. So I always said most people look like some kind of animal or a bear or something like that. So people would say, "What I look like?" I'd be like, "We're not gonna have this discussion." So I stopped saying that because when you tell people they look like an animal, they get offended. So anyway,
Probably
they get offended. They do. They get offended. So they call me. They say, "Hey, it's this guy named Tommy Chun. He doing comedy down here, and you need to come down here and try to do comedy." Well, I had never really did comedy.
Oh, like what year? What year around time?
91.
Okay.
So the lead up was my sister passed in February of 91. So my world was like.
And this was the big sister that like cared for you.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
even though this is a sister, it's kind of like an auntie, pseudo
Mama, all
type
of that.
figure. Yeah.
All of that.
Yeah.
And this is why I tell people talk about stress, because she had a stress-related stroke. She ain't do none of the drinking, all that stuff. She didn't do none of that. She might have drank if she went out with me, but that's a whole story, another story. So my sister passed in February of 91. She had a husband. She had 3 children, but my world just changed. Boof. So,
because now you kind of go from being like able to kind of play around, being a young one,
yeah,
to now you're thrust into.
I'm 28 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Got to raise my 2 nieces and my nephew. Even though their father was quote unquote present, I still had to be that part. So they came and lived with us. So my life shifted, and I really needed therapy. I did. I really needed therapy. I really needed counseling. I was a nurse too, and I was working. And when my girlfriend said, "We doing comedy down here," this guy named Tommy Chun is doing comedy. You need to come down here. It was God saying, "This is gonna be your therapy." So I went down there. It was April of 91. I went down there.
So not very long after the passing of your.
Oh, not 2 months maybe. Like the 1st of April. I almost want to say April Fool's Day, but maybe 1st or 2nd. So I get down there, it was on a Wednesday night, and I talked to the guy, and he said, "What's your name?" I said, Coco.
What made you say Coco?
Okay. One of my patients would always tell me, he said, "You so brown and thick and warm."
It sounds like that patient was trying to.
Oh yeah, he was
trying to, as we say, get in a shot.
Yeah, and he always acted like
get some extra care, as they call it.
He was a little more visually impaired than what I knew he was, so he would always like grab me, and I'd be like, "Listen,
the Ray Charles."
Yeah. I'm like, "I know you can see some. You can see some. Yeah, you what you grabbing is fleshy mounds of you grabbing mounds of my fleshy goodness, and I know you can see what you grabbing." Khary, I knew he could. So I would go in his room, and I'm like, "I need to put you in the bed so I could give you a shot," whatever the case may be. And I'm moving him out the wheelchair, but when I grab him, he like, you sure smell good. I said, hey. I'm just saying, you smell, and he had a stick that you sure smell good. And I put him in the bed, and he be grabbing me. I said, why you grab me? I thought I was gonna fall.
Hilarious.
I said, you knew damn well you ain't gonna fall.
Hilarious. All right, now let me say this. Okay, and Coco knows this. Like, okay, and for all the social justice warriors, especially Piper, I am not making fun of anything in sexual assault. But
No.
my arc of comedy is just more so the decision making, especially when it comes to men, but just even black and white people and dynamics.
Absolutely.
Like the black experience has me have to release a lot of this craziness through comedy. That's why of the art forms I love most, you're going to see Khary do comedy shows.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of people may be like, Khary, you so pro-black and you do this on stage and you laugh at, yes, I'm laughing because if I don't laugh at some of this stuff, and she said it's through therapy, then you will have that stress-related stroke.
You will explode.
You know, and what that brother dealing with is horrible as far as I'm sure the pain and where he's at. And he probably don't know how to mentally have the capacity to say, I'm attracted to you, even though you're caring for me. And I would like to possibly see an opportunity if we could share some time. That's not his faculty.
No, because this man was 822 years old. Okay, can we just go to that? We gonna go to that.
Probably, and then a lot of these brothers, like I'm gonna be real with a lot of men. Like I was running the track today at Central, and we gonna get back to the story. But a lot of men after the age of 50, just due to the other dynamics of how life is, are really by themselves. My block is full of them. Like, and when I say this, meaning men above 50 that have not had the best relationships with women,
children,
with their children, with friends, with anything. So they're isolated. It's a lot of black men, and hence that's why so much black men homelessness. And I'm not even waving a banner for you guys to start giving to a fund or anything.
Yes.
But it's a lot of black men that the only people they will interact with is a caregiver for the rest of their life from 50 on. And I mean, for real. I got certain people in my family where it's like, it's kind of tough dealing with them because they were such curmudgeons and harder to deal with, but they're still on that. So I'm going to just go to this classic story I usually give, not, I don't think on air yet, but one Father's Day a couple years back running the track at Northwestern, and it was a couple other brothers older. You could tell all above 60, well, about 4 of them. And they usually run and they see me and stuff. And 2 of them opened up. They was like, man, it's Father's Day. And most of them got like 8 kids. And I know probably not that present in their lives. And they
8.
I have never been able to celebrate Father's Day. And you the closest thing. And this is so weird. Like, I don't know these guys. I run the track. They do push-ups. And I'd be like, they like, you the closest thing to a young person in my life. Wow. So it's like, damn, you know what I'm saying? Sometimes life really hits you about like the loneliness of so many black men 50 up. And it still don't change that they're gonna be creepy because they was probably creepy when they was younger.
Absolutely.
And that's why they by themselves. So I'm just saying that it's still other things going on, like most things in the black experience.
It's so intricate and there's so many layers to that because in this gentleman's mind, he like, and I knew his diagnosis. I knew he had syphilis early on and had lost his vision related to several bouts of having syphilis, and it affected his vision. But I also knew what he could see. But I also understood that for him, this was what it was. Yeah. So, and he would say stuff like, you know what? And that's how I came with Coco. He said, you know what? You like hot chocolate. He said, nope, you thicker than that. You thicker than that.
That's hilarious.
And he had you thicker than that. You like Coco.
That's hilarious.
So when I started comedy, I reverted back to that whole dialogue, and I'm Coco.
So you signed. I'm guessing you signed the list, or how does that work?
I talked to Tommy Chun. He asked me had I ever been on stage before, and I told him I used to sing and I did some acting, but comedy was different. So I went up. And
were you first, last, or what?
I was kind of in the middle.
Okay.
Kind of in the middle. Mike Bonner was there. Keith Ruff was there. A comedian named Mark Steele was there. Skeeter Murray. It was some comedians there where I was the only woman.
Did you invite your friends? Because sometimes people wait to invite friends because they like, I don't want to see my friends get booed. Or how did you approach that?
So I was engaged at the time. My fiance was with me. My friend Renee, she had invited some folks, and they came down. And I went on stage, and in my mind, I said, okay, this is what I'm going to talk about. And I just talked about some women related things. And I got some, a few laughs or whatever. And I said, okay, but those laughs were addictive.
But so you didn't crash and burn your first time.
No, I didn't crash and burn.
It was like, okay.
I coasted.
Yeah.
I coasted.
So it was like, okay, I can do this again and I can probably get more laughs.
Yes.
When did you touch the stage again?
The next week. So on Tuesday night.
You were addicted.
Yeah. On Tuesday nights, they used to do comedy at Club Penta inside the Fisher Building. And then Wednesday night was Scruples. So I'm still, now mind you, I'm still
working.
I'm still a full-time mom.
You done took on some other kids.
Still working. I got my nieces and nephews, and I'm in a whole relationship. So I had to work out a plan. I went to a friend of mine. His name is, an attorney. He live in, I think, Jackson, Michigan. We just gonna call him George. We gonna call George. And I talked to George, and George introduced me to one of his good friends that was a writer for Motown, right? And I met this person, and, we had some conversations. He was like, well, if you're going to do comedy, you may want to do this, this, and this, and this, this, and this. And I said, okay. And I listened. So I even worked on like a little 2 or 3 minute set with George, and he was like, okay, and he used to call me Tempe, you ready? So I did it. And whenever there was an open mic or there was a place to go and do comedy, because I would go home from work, because I was working days then. I would go home, get my daughter settled, get the household situated and all that stuff, and then go do comedy. And then go sit in a Coney Island or some 24-hour restaurant and blow squares and smoke cigarettes and drink coffee, because I was a smoker then. And then I would come home, take a bath, get ready for work, and do it all over again. It became addictive. But the stuff that I was talking about was kind of harsh. And my voice was, and this is how you learn to tweak and pull back. My voice was, I got that strong timber
coffee
in my
and
voice.
Cigarettes.
Listen, Newports and strong-ass cowboy coffee. If the coffee wasn't strong, it was doing me wrong. I'm just saying. The coffee had to be strong enough to stain the inside of a styrofoam cup.
Yeah, the truck driver kit.
What? Yes. The I'm in recovery kit. Yeah, like I have, and then I did, that was my thing. So I started doing it more and more, and I started getting out more and more, and I would ask Tommy Chung questions and Mike Bonner. And I remember that July, they had a contest at Scruples, and they was like, we doing a comedy contest, and it was a lot of people at Scruples. It was a lot of people, because they would come to Scruples and then go across the street to Floods Wednesday night. A lot of people, and if you won, you got $75. 1991, $75 was a carton of cigarettes, a whole bunch of coffee, gas in my car, all of that, and I could give my mama a couple dollars. So I got in the contest, and I won.
Wow.
I won. So Tommy Chun, I think Tommy Chun hosted, but all of those comedians that had been doing comedy for a while, I won. And that was such a boost. It was a boost to my ego, but not in an arrogant sense, in a sense of, you could do this. So I kept doing it, and I kept doing it.
And which leads me to the next question.
Yes.
When the first time you took the L? When the first time it was like, whoo.
Man, listen.
Oh, man.
It was a club on Woodward, and it was called, it had been something else, but at this time it was Sharp's Seven Flags. And it was a cat that owned the club, and it might have been on Woodward in Amsterdam, Woodward, somewhere in there. And got to the club. I had went and picked up my friends. Did I tell you I had an old Ford LTD, and the driver's seat was broke, and I had a piece of 2x4 and a milk crate behind it.
Wow.
Because if you moved it, the seat would just go pluck back.
That's hilarious.
Okay. And I went to Sharp Seven Flags and went on stage, and I was talking about women, and it was some women heckling me. And I came totally out of being a comedian and went straight to the hood. I was talking real strong. And it was like, we'll do so and so and so. I'm like, okay, well then, it's about that then. Let's go.
So it like no more performance,
No,
no more Coco.
No, we going to the parking lot. But when I tell you, when they started heckling me, and I needed that. When they started heckling me, it was like, boof. And I was like, okay, we could go. So I came off stage, and 2 or 3 of them came up to me. They was ready. I said, we could do this. And the guy was like, no, we're not gonna do this. I'm like, yeah, we can. I'm with that.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, okay, I had to talk myself down, like, listen, okay, now you need to calm down or whatever. Because you can't be up in here tussling and fighting with people. That's something that you just can't do. So I said, you're right. I was like, you're right. Okay. So I got back to, I had to ask myself, what was it about them heckling me that bothered me? And how to handle a heckler. So I went to the Mike Bonner, Tommy Chun, all those cats. Because then, Khary, those guys were a plethora of knowledge. And they didn't mind sharing it. This new breed of comedians is totally different. Because you can't say nothing to them. Some of them, you can't say nothing to some of these new comedians. I said that. But back then, you have a conversation. Like, good set, when you do that joke about such and such, you might want to tweak it and add this and that or whatever. And I would take the advice. I remember the very first time I went on the road was in 1992. I went on the road.
So wait, also, let me say this.
Okay.
That is a fast track to comedy success. To start in 91 and 92 already be there, but also knowing you're developing your voice and you have some talent.
Yes.
Don't expect to be on the road 1 year in the comedy if you're a comedian. Especially in today, a lot of things have changed. The culture is different.
Yes.
During the start of the 90s, the other thing that's happening as you're starting in comedy is it's an explosion of comedy clubs popping up across the country.
Black clubs, if
black
you will.
and white, but period. It's comedy had more stages.
It did, and the stages were stages where you learn. So
I gotta add this also too. And stages for comedy. Right now, the way that comedy's promoted, as a person that promotes comedy, usually is promoted around a person or a theme.
Yeah.
Whereas before, like especially like the comedy club would promote like it will be couples, and it still somewhat happens where it'll be like, oh, let's just go on a date to a comedy club, and whoever's on stage, we're going to enjoy it, and we will be welcome to it. That's not the way that it's delivered today.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add.
Yeah. So exactly. So in April of 92, which was literally a year later, Mike Bonner was going to Chicago. He said, hey, I'm doing this show in Chicago at this club called The Click, and you want to go? I said, for real? He was like, yeah, you want to go? And he explained it to me. I said, well, what do I do? He said, I'm headlining, and you just go on stage and do about 10, 15 minutes. And I have been working on that tight 10 or 15 minutes because it's a science.
Wait, I gotta give some more advice, even though I know they don't want to take it. Also, look, can you be on stage and talk for an hour? Yes. But having a tight 10 is an art form. Like, you think that to be at a level of Coco or Dave Chappelle, like where they can do crowd work, or even my homie Josh Adams, like it took years to get to the points of knowing the beats and understanding so much in the audience. And this kind of goes back to even the heckling. Like, and I've learned this through Rest in Peace Kool-Aid for me and my ad hoc ass comedy that I used to sometimes put together with my events. He'd be like, Khary, you got to set the stage up for comedy. And this impacts whether people heckle, how people listen to the audience, how people receive what it is. Because comedy, as much as it's not, it's a very easy art form to disrespect, even as a promoter, unless you put it in the right framework. And I can straight up tell you from doing it myself. So I'm not speaking from, this is the coloring outside the lines, Khary. I'm speaking from doing it the wrong way, meaning I can set up a stage and I can guarantee people will start heckling. Then I can set up a stage where nobody's going to heckle. It's all about how you introduce people. It's about how you set up the music, how you set up the timing, how you set up where things go online, who the person is that's the host, who the other comedians are. Like certain things that seem like, oh, this is just people talking with a microphone. No. It is that, but these are people talking with a microphone knowing so many other skills. Michael Jordan is technically a guy that had a basketball in his hand going to a hoop, but he does that way better than you. And you got to look at the art form of comedy in the same respect, because if you don't, I can already tell you, if you don't do a comedy show the right way, it's all gonna go off the rails.
Can I paraphrase that? You get your ass tore out the frame. That's just
Yes.
that's so comedy is the most revered yet the most respected art form when you look at entertainment.
Yeah.
Cause I get people. I've been 32 years. Boots laced tight, 10 toes deep. Oh, Coco, my uncle a comedian. I'll be like, for real? Yeah, his name is Hot Water Cornbread.
Hilarious.
I think he should come to one of your shows and you put him on stage. Baby, your uncle can make y'all laugh at the family reunion. He can make y'all laugh at the dining room table. I guarantee you, going on stage is different.
And then we got to add in that asterisk of black audiences even harder. I've done stuff with white audiences, and I'm not saying that they're easy, but even if they're you have more patience. Like with black audiences, it's almost like this is the disposition.
Yeah,
make me laugh.
Can I say
right
it
now?
Yep, you better be fun. You better make me laugh
right now.
And the white experiences is, I know they're going to be funny. We're going to have a great time.
Yeah, and they'll at least give you, like with a white audience, I say you probably got like maybe a minute and a half to get to where you're going to go, where people are interested. With a black audience, you almost need to start out 5 seconds.
You got to run to the stage naked and set yourself on fire and
yes.
then jump in the beer bottle and douse the flames. Literally.
Yeah,
because
I've seen people set up jokes in the black audience like, well, yesterday I was, hey, shut the hell up.
Yeah, we don't care about your yesterday.
And it's like, damn, he just he didn't even get a chance to set the joke up.
All of that, everything plays into the dynamics of going on stage. So when Mike asked me to go on stage, I had been around it, and we caught the train to Chicago. Mm-hmm. We shared a hotel room. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because we got to Chicago, we went to one hotel, but that wasn't where we were staying. So we had to go to another hotel out on Lakeshore, whatever. Mm-hmm. But I was honored that he asked me to go on the road with him. And I did what I came to do. Was I nervous? Abso-freaking-lutely. I was nervous because it was literally the first time I had been out of town to work as a comedian. Mm. So I did what I needed to do, and I told the host, she was like, well, you need to come back and headline. I said, I ain't ready. Mm. I could have said, oh, yeah, I could come back. Yeah. But I would have crashed and burned.
You'd have tried to crowd work that 10 minutes, and they would have, and the audience, especially a black audience, would have been able to poke through it, and immediately that's heckling.
Yeah, all of that.
And to get up
I wouldn't have had nothing else to get them. So that's funny you say that, because what happened was moving into Def Jam, 94, 95.
And I was just about to ask that question.
Yeah, moving into Def Jam, it was a lot of people who did Def Jam, and they had that hot 7 minutes on Def Jam, and they blew the crowd up.
A classic example of this, and I mean, great actor and everything, is Chris Tucker. And I mean, it's many stories where he'll even say it. Faison Love, which was more a traveling comedian. So, and it's happening right now with a lot of Instagram comedians where they may have like 5 or 10 minutes, and then they're doing entertainment and songs and trying to interact with the crowd. But then you'll get a real comedian to anchor it down. Mm-hmm. We were speaking about one now. I don't want to put it on air. But to anchor it down, because, that's what happened with Chris Tucker. Chris Tucker had probably one of the greatest, most legendary sets ever with what he had for Def Comedy Jam. But he didn't have much beyond that. So he would do impersonations and other things, but people were seeing that this ain't really a show.
Yeah.
So you could put like a Chris Tucker. So I know this sounds crazy for people in thought process. So you could take like a Chris Tucker in 1996, and then you put him on the stage with a Bernie Mac at the time that was not as successful, but Bernie had decades of comedy where it's like, oh, clearly.
Listen.
This is the guy.
Let me tell you something. I got so many stories. I'm gonna give you this story real quick. Bernie Mac. When I would, as my comedy grew, and I would go to Chicago, I would try to work out a situation where I could stay a Monday, right? Still working, and at this time, I sort of transitioned and got into doing comedy like more often, and I worked up into a point. But I wanted to stay in Chicago one more day because it was a club called the Cotton Club in Chicago, and Bernie Mac used to host like a variety show at the Cotton Club on Mondays. That boy would be slapping. And what Bernie would do, and if you watch one of his interviews, he'll say this: he wouldn't do no new jokes in front of comedians because they steal your jokes. He would do the stuff that he had been doing, the repetition. But when I tell you, everybody would come to the Cotton Club to see this amateur night. And this it would be bands or whatever. Deion Cole has an amazing story that he met Phyllis Hyman. Phyllis Hyman was kind of heckling him at the Cotton Club, and they had a conversation about him going on the road with her and opening up for her. And when they connected, when he tried to reconnect with her, she had passed. Yes. So it was so much going on. The Cotton Club, man, listen, it was the place to be.
I've heard about it, and it reminds me kind of someone else we share in honor of the idea, because it used to blow my mind. My godmother, rest in peace, Mama Barnes, or Thea Barnes.
Yes.
And it just used to blow my mind of how she would, I'm like, one second, so you did the same show? Because this is the way a lot of Black entertainment is set up. Another thing in our experience. So Black entertainment in period, when it comes to performance, starts from what I guess is labeled as the vaudeville experience.
Yeah.
Vaudeville experience.
Or they call
really,
it the chitlin circuit
the
or
chitlin
whatever.
circuit.
Yeah.
But that's where you get Sammy Davis Jr., Moms Mabley, Peg Leg Bates, Louis Armstrong,
Cab Calloway,
all these other artists.
All of them.
This is when the talent was so extreme, because this is how abundant Black talent is. You had to sing, you had to dance, you had to do jokes, you had to act. They were doing everything. I mean, this is really what you had to do, all for people to be like, all right, I guess I'll give you my 5 cents, which would be an equivalent of like
$500.
Let's say that up today. It's like, I guess, but the guy that we be, sharecropping corn with is kind of better than this guy. So Sammy, you was tap dancing, you was singing, you was acting, you was in skits. Like, this was how Black performance started. So hence, like, what Orthea created was what I hear with the Body Shop and everything else, and what she did with
Snickers.
Yeah, with Snickers, like what she did was she created an experience that people were, it's like, okay, she was like, okay, I got 1 show Thursday, 2 shows Friday, 3 shows Saturday, 2 shows Sunday. And I'm like, one second, people consistently pack the house for this? And
yes.
It's like, most definitely.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh, you were working the same? And it's like, yes, because if you create an experience that people come to.
And she was, and I don't want to interrupt you, she was an experience. Me and my friends would go to Snickers downtown. It used to be on Woodward Park. Was it Park or Shell, whatever, and we would go to Snickers to see her, and sometimes we would stay for both shows, but no two shows were the same though.
And that's where I would be like, one second, so people would stay for 3 shows on Saturday, and then how
and pay.
She pinched my cheek like, yeah, baby, and I'd be like, I can barely get people to 1 show. Like, what am I doing without the experience?
Because she made everybody feel like they were somebody.
Yeah.
She made and she knew who birthday it was, and the celebrities that were in the building, and the city council and everything. When you went to see her, and it sometimes remind me of myself. I know, but when you went to see her, it's like nobody was just a member of the audience.
Yeah.
No, nobody.
I mean, when she did the reunion show with Millie at what's that place? Man, and I like that place too. It's like off the street. It's in the park where Bucharest started. It's kind of like off, but that restaurant over there, they shot a lot of
Cliff Bell's.
Yes,
Cliff Bell's.
When she did that at Cliff Bell's, and she was like, "I'm gonna take you in on the business," because I used to ask these questions. So she was like, "I'm gonna show you how me and Millie about to work it, and I'm gonna work it." Okay. And she walked over to the owner and she gave a liquor listing. And the owner was like, they were like, you ain't gonna sell that much liquor. They sold out of liquor They sold out of liquor for the first show, and this is how you know you're doing good. When you see the owner drive to the regular liquor store
and pay that price,
to buy real liquor instead of the liquor store price. I mean, the liquor distributing prices, because it kept going that fast. And people were in the audience saying, I met my wife here, me and my this there. It's like, as you say, it's experiential, and you created that with Coco's, which we'll get to. But when I hear the Cotton Club stories, I think of that experience.
Bernie Mac created a total experience. And although he was a comedian, he donutted that around the singers and the poets
Yes.
and all of those things.
All of Chicago culture.
Yes, so much that he had a tour that came out called Mac Tonight.
Mm.
And it came to the Fox, and he had a band.
Hmm.
He had singers. He hosted it, but he was the host. He came out, the Barry Mac, and he would bring out some singers, and then he had a band, and then we come out and close the show and do his comedy.
Yep.
And he did quite a few cities with. It was called Mac Tonight, and I don't know if people remember that, but it was Mac Tonight, and he brought that Bernie Mac energy and that love and all those things to folks because he was able to do that. First of all, Bernie Mac used to do comedy on the L train. And the L train is like the Finkel bus, but it's the train that took you from one end of Chicago to the other end.
It's as I always say when I drive down to the bridge, I'm like, that's where Coach Cheese died.
Yep, really high, absolutely. So he was able to do that. So I was thankful that I had all those people around me in that whole comedy donut. So here we go, Def Jam. I auditioned for Def Jam probably 4 times, maybe 3 times before I finally got it.
Okay.
And when I got it, the talent coordinator, Bob Summer, I auditioned at, and this is what I told my friends. I said, after tonight, I'm not going to audition anymore. I'm not doing it. Now, I went, and we were at All Jokes Aside, and I auditioned. And it was like I did the joke because I had been working on the joke with the bottles, pulling all the stuff out. I had been, shout out to my man, JB, the comedian. I had perfected it somewhat, pulling the bottles and stuff out. So that was the joke I did. But when you do a joke like that, you got to stay there and ride it out. So you got to have something else to take you the rest of the way with the joke. So I said, okay. So after I did the joke and set the stuff down, people looking at it and they still laughing at that. So I had to go into the other part of my other set. So that within itself was challenging. But I got it, and I was able to do it and pull all the dots together. So Bob Sumner came up to me. He said, okay, you got it. And that was for real. In my mind, I'm not going to audition
How
anymore.
fast did it take after Def Jam for, okay, I can go on the road now? For real.
See, I had been going on the road off and on. So,
well, I mean, headlining everywhere. Like, what happened? God. What was the immediate response to the phone call that really threw you off? Like, wow, they want me in Alaska?
That's funny because I did. I did Def Jam, and
what year was that? And what?
96.
And it aired in 96 too?
Yep.
Okay.
So I did, the first time I did Comic View and Def Jam was both in 1996. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting because Comic View did not pay you. This how much money. You got $150 to do Comic View, right? They didn't fly you out, and they didn't put you up. Mm-hmm. You had to, and they gave you a list of suggested hotels. But I'm like, I ain't staying there.
Good old L.A.
My friends in L.A. was like, no, you don't want to stay there.
Good old L.A.
So when I went to do Comic View, my girl Hope Flood, shout out to Hope Flood, me and my boy Horace H.B. Sanders stayed at her house like for one night, maybe a night and a half. Excuse me. So I said, Hope, you got to take some money. She said, I don't want no money. So you know what I did? I washed dishes. I washed her clothes. I folded up her clothes. Her son was there, and I ordered pizza for her son because she wouldn't take no money.
Yeah.
So it was funny because my house, when people would come to Detroit or they were near me, they would come stay at my house. Even if I was at work, I'd be like, you can stay at my house. I always had food and all that. So I wouldn't take no money either. So when I got a chance to like hope out, I don't want no money. You pass that on. So I did Comic View, and I don't know which one I did first, and then I did Def Jam. So after I got back, and when they aired Def Jam, it was like my world was like it started going really, really fast, and I started getting all the phone calls. So when I did Def Jam, I had just started in radio. I started in radio September 96.
And I was just about to ask that.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and I guess intersperse that story into things as well.
So before I went and did Def Jam, I would do stuff with the radio station. Like if it was Ladies Night Out, they would call me, "Hey Coco, you want to come and perform for Ladies Night Out?" Sure. I would go and open up the show and do that, and I would kind of hobnob with the acts or whatever. And then in September '96, this is an amazing story, and I'm gonna be brief as I possibly can. So anyway, I got a call. And one of my buddies, Motown Mike, was the production director. And he was whispering. I said, "Why are you whispering?" He said, "Because I think the station is going to call you about working for them." I said, "What?" And somebody else had called me. So I said, "Okay." So they called me. And they said, "We want to come in and interview. We want you to come in so we could talk to you about working with us." So Mason would always ask me when he would see me, "Don't you want to do radio?" I'd be like, "I'm not finna get up there early."
Hilarious.
I said, "What time you got to be there?" He said, 5:30. I said, "I ain't finna get up until 4 o'clock." And this is how I know when God has a plan for you, it's your plan. So I'm like, "I ain't finna get up that early." And whenever he would see me, he would ask me that. So when I get the call and I went in and I talked to them and they officially hired me, I was like, "How much money do I ask for?" And I didn't know. And they said, "Well, you need to get back with us and let us know, get with your people and let us know what kind of salary you looking at." I said, "Okay." So I called my man Raymond Lambert, who owned All Jokes Aside. He was one of the owners here and in Chicago. I said, "Raymond, listen." He said, "I already know." I said, "So how do I negotiate the money?" Raymond gave me a number, and I'm not going to be emotional. Raymond gave me a number. He said, "Call my friend Chris and have a conversation with him." And Chris knows all about that, and he negotiates deals and deal with athletes or whatever. I said, "Okay." So I called this Chris. "Hey, Chris, Raymond told me to call you." He said, "I know." I talked to Raymond, and he said, "Well, let me do a little research." I said, "Okay." So he started putting stuff together, and I started in September. I didn't get paid till December. Because they were negotiating
The contract.
So we finally came up with some numbers, and it was the most money I had ever made in my life.
Wow.
Ever. And they had to go back to September and pay me. So I go to the bank, and I got all these checks. And I think this is where professionalism started to kind of diminish in a sense. So I'm in the bank, and I'm giving the lady the checks. She's like, "Well, what you do that you getting paid this kind of money?"
That's hilarious.
I said, "Why you talking so loud?"
That's hilarious.
"I'm just trying to figure out what you do. What is this company?"
I love my people.
She was loud though.
I love my people. She was trying to get you robbed.
Yeah, listen.
I love my people.
Cracked in the head.
I love my people.
So I'm trying to be cool. I'm like, she said, "Well, what is this company called?" I said, "It's a radio station." She's like, "Well, who are you?" Real funky.
Yeah.
I said, "I'm Coco."
Love my people.
"You the new girl that's on the radio with Mason?" I said, and the loudest she got, I was using my
Quieter. Yeah.
Yeah, I said, "Yeah."
You trying to get me right.
"Oh man, listen, y'all, this the new girl, and
Hilarious.
this the new girl that be on the radio with Mason. We didn't know what you look like. We just heard you talking one day."
Hilarious.
I said, "Can I get them checks cashed though?"
Hilarious.
So the guard, I hustling. People in line, because I'm just slid to the side. People,
they like, how much money is it?
Yeah, people in line.
Let me go to the payphone. This back in the day. Let me go to the payphone to get my homies up here.
Yes. So the people in line looking, and she was like, "Girl, that's the new girl." Okay, we thought, and then they started telling me what they thought that I looked like, because we thought you looked like this. Well, you don't look like we thought you looked. And I'm like, Can I get my yes, Castle? Yes. So here come Miss Manager.
Hilarious.
I said, "Ma'am, I just want to get." I said, the company.
I want to conduct my business.
Yeah, the company is the company. This the bank that the company drawing the checks on. I want to cash my checks and go. You don't want to open an account? I'm thinking, hell no.
Not after this experience.
Not with this loud ass cackle bird over here, no. So she was like, "Okay." So it took them literally 30 minutes. And they counting and counting and counting. My boy Miko, that was a producer, he was with me. So I did have somebody with me, and they counted, and then they came back, and she got it counted and put in the envelopes and all that stuff like that. So I stood there for a minute. I finally got the money, and the manager kept saying, "You don't want to open an account?" I said, "No." I said, "Y'all talk too damn much. I'm not trying to open no
Hell
account.
no. It's like,
Not at all."
yeah, I mean, clearly the first thing she gonna do is like, you know how much Coco making?
Yes. So I take my money, and of course gave my mama some and did all that stuff. And I wound up opening. One of my good friends' brother was a bank manager in one of the banks inside the Penobscot building, and that's where I opened my account. Was with him, and I went in there and I was like, "Kenny, I got my checks from the radio station, and I want to open an account." And Kenny was real discreet. I gave him the money and all of that. Opened my account, kept it moving. So, fast forward to maybe 10 years ago, maybe 10 years. It probably wasn't even 10 years. Raymond Lambert does a whole documentary about the business of comedy.
Yeah, and the book, and watch that Showtime documentary about All Jokes Aside, and read the book. It's very impressive about the way he approached running a black comedy club from more of a like business finance, like kind of like a meet, like my approach towards some of this stuff, like taking stabs at it as opposed to like the usual approach to a lot of comedy club experiences.
Yeah. So Raymond was a stickler. Like, it was certain words that you couldn't say on stage.
Yeah.
It was certain words that you could not say on stage. He said, "Listen, yes, you are black, but I want to groom the comedians that work with me on how to perform in any setting." I said, "Okay. If you were late, you got docked." It was only one comedian that would be late. George Wilborn.
I was like the whole. I was gonna say George Wilborn has a coloring out the lines disposition as well.
But he was on the air. He did radio.
Yeah, I know.
So he was on the air from 3 to 7. So by the time he jumped in the car or the driver got him there, he could be a little late. But that was it.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot. Like Steve Harvey worked there, Cedric the Entertainer worked there, Mike Epps, and those comedians, Ricky Smiley, all them. Raymond taught you how to be a comedian, but also how to do corporate events.
Yeah.
How to transition and be a master of ceremony, a mistress of ceremony. So you wasn't just no. Raymond taught you how to be a professional comedian. So when he did the book and we went to the Charles H. Wright to see the movie, the clip came up with Chris Gardner, who Will Smith played in Pursuit of Happiness. So dig this. When Chris popped up and said, when Raymond came to me and said he needed to borrow some money to open the comedy club, I'm like, blah, blah, blah. And it clicked. Chris Gardner was the person that negotiated my contract. And I did not know
the backstory at all.
Not at all. So when it was when I saw it on the video, on the film, because I hadn't seen the movie, I started boo-hooing. And a couple of my friends was like, "What's wrong with you?" I'm talking about, I was sobbing like somebody had stole my dog. I was crying. And when they did the Q&A, I stood up and I said, "Raymond, I have to say this." I said, when I got my contract negotiated with JLB, I did not know that was the man negotiating my contract.
Yeah.
And everybody was like, "Oh." So afterwards, after everybody left, I came and sat down, and I was hugging him, and I was rocking with him like, "Oh, yeah, you didn't tell me." And I'm snorting and snocking and everything, because people don't have to do what they do for you.
No.
They don't have to extend themselves. They don't have to share the amazing people in their life with you. And we need to understand that. Raymond didn't have to reach out to his man, one of the investors, and all that, and say, help my friend out. He didn't have to do that. So I was emotional for that reason. I'm like, "Oh my God." That kind of crying. But it just further for me, and I remember having this conversation with him. Once he negotiated everything, I said, "How much do I owe you?" He said, "You don't owe me nothing." I said, "Sir, I know I owe you something." He said, "Listen, Raymond called me and told me to take care of you, and that's what I did." I said, "I don't owe you nothing." He He said, no. He said, just when you meet somebody that has a need and you could help them, do that for them.
I think that's such a beautiful thing to hear that story, because he's on the list of people that it's like, man, one day I'm gonna meet him in Crossing, and now I see more of the connection. But when I saw that documentary, because I have so much interest in this, and it oozes even from my granddad running the club in Cleveland and stuff. Like, I think I can make more sense of some of the chaos of the way Black entertainment is offered.
Absolutely.
And I do think that, that's where I think really comedy also anchors me in this, because Kool-Aid was one of the first to take a flyer on me.
Yep. Wow.
And then through Kool-Aid, you get connected to Tony Roney and Howie Bell, and then from there you connected to Foolish and Martini Harris and all of you OGs that like, and I've worked and I've learned, but it's supposed to be things I learned. So when I see things like, all jokes aside, I'm like, okay, you can develop better systems to get a better delivery, because it's also an arc, and I respect that too. Like just let me just be honest, in that vaudeville culture, like vaudeville culture and a lot of Black business is also connected to street business or black collarness.
Of course.
Or criminality, just because those opportunities are abundant in community. And let me be also honest.
A lot of the funding came from the numbers industry and prostitution and the gangs and the passing of the envelopes with the money in it. Of course. So much so, I hate to interrupt you, because when you said that, I thought about it. In Idlewild, and Idlewild is a real place, but in Idlewild, when they would do shows in Idlewild, it would be Cab Calloway at one spot, Pearl Bailey at another spot, and so forth and so on. And the women and men would line up to go to the show, and the men would take their handkerchiefs and put it on the ground, because the women had heels on, their feet was hurting, and the women would stand on the handkerchief, and then they would set the shows up where if you went to see Red Fox in Idlewild, the show would end, but give you time enough to go to another spot to see him. And definitely, it was money. It was everything anchored in keeping that whole thing, that whole narrative alive. Absolutely.
And my first
drugs.
Let me be honest. Let me get honest with this. So, like, my foray into a lot of this entertainment starts through hip hop.
Okay.
And one of the toughest things about hip hop, as much as I love it, and even like I was telling the person, I was like, okay, that does make sense when I had to explain, like, it's like, Khary, you'll be cussing and all of this. And it's like, okay, my inner voice is really like Ice Cube, Tupac, Biggie. Like, so if you really know me intimately,
Lil Wayne.
That's what my inner voice is. My inner voice.
Little Scoochie Boo.
All of that is
all
my
the hood
inner
stuff.
But really, especially that era between like 89 and 94, like that's what's, I'm waking up, like when people say they wake up and they meditate, I'm waking up to Bird in the Hand. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's me, like, okay, I got to focus and I got to connect. So, Moneybag Yo or wherever that is. Right. But I want to say this. It's still community, even within street culture, when it's executed how I've seen it executed best. So it plays a role in a lot of the other business forays. Absolutely. And I think that that's one arc that goes into Black entertainment, and really, to be honest, even white entertainment, because it is present as and it's not even just washing money as far, but they are the people that are most willing to say, look, I got to put a tour together and it's going to cost $500,000. You already know a bank's going to look at that and say, oh, the options and da-da-da-da. It's going to be some street money that's going to say, you know what? I'll front that to you.
Especially when you look at it then as opposed to now. It's a little more civilized and in-house as opposed to outside the house.
Hey.
If you watch the movie The Cotton Club with the Hines brothers, all of those things, if you watch Lady Sings the Blues, no matter how fictitious a story may seem, it's always some
roots
truth.
Of reality for us to even watch it.
Cadillac Records, it's always some truth threaded and woven into that. Yeah.
It's going to be a relationship between both. So I think one of the real cool ones, a lot of people may not have seen it because it was on Apple TV, but The Banker, where you have Samuel Jackson, Nia Long, and Anthony Mackie. And it talks about the brother that creates a system for real estate to exist, but he needed the backing of, and this guy is kind of like me. He went to school, had all of the masters, but the banks ain't going to give him nothing.
Yeah.
So you got to go to Samuel Jackson, the street guy, under the word of Nia Long because she's known
Absolutely.
him for forever.
And it's usually a woman that winds up connecting the dots. Let's just put that out there. Yeah.
If you're going to connect with a street individual,
Yeah.
it's usually best there because it's other dynamics and machismo and other things and where things go with angles.
She knows how to
Yes.
she know how to feed that over there, and she know how to feed that over there, and she know how to connect the dots. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I do want to, I'm not saying that everybody needs to do one way or the other, and I'm not even saying my way is better. I just have a full scope of how Black entertainment is offered. And I do think across the board, because even the street guys want better systems with the way entertainment is delivered because it functions better.
But Khary, what has happened, the respect was there. I watch Elliot Ness and I watch Perry Mason, and even in those settings, when you see, as they call them, a dame or a doll on stage singing, those guys will come in the club, sit down, and enjoy the show. A lot of these cats that got 1 foot in, 1 foot out, yeah, cause see, and it's hard to deal with that culture or pull that culture in, because back then they didn't want to be seen. These new cats, they want to be seen.
Good old Instagram has incriminated more people.
Oh,
than,
baby!
Like, as much as rappers love talking about snitching on yourself has become.
Yeah, you don't have to do nothing, because and Lord have mercy, I'm not condoning none of that, but I'm just saying the reality of it has been a lot of folks still don't want to be seen. A lot of folks don't.
The
but
ones
a lot
that I
of them
think that are most successful are people you would never know because
Absolutely.
they're wearing Sears clothing. They're like the story of those white dudes. They're
with a
wearing Sears
Timex
clothing,
on. Yeah.
driving a Honda Civic, and you wouldn't
From
even
95,
you would have no idea what's going on. They shopping in Whole Foods, but at night it's a whole different individual.
Oh yeah.
But which leads to the other angle of that same offering. So now you're on radio.
Mm-hmm.
You're across the country.
Absolutely.
And also, so 96 is just like a pivotal year for you.
96 was a pivotal year for me. It was so interesting on so many levels, because getting into radio without formally, my gift of gab got me into radio.
Yep.
So I didn't go to a Specs Howard or to a broadcasting school or media art. I didn't do none of that.
And wait, and let me say this.
And people was real mad.
Let me blueprint this. She is not saying that it doesn't make sense to do that. She is not saying that it wouldn't be helpful. She is not saying that
he offering a disclaimer.
You can take her life path either. Because it's a lot she did learn over, School of Hard Knocks.
I was always a student.
Always that.
Yeah.
But continue. I just want to get that disclaimer, because I know sometimes people hear that and they be like, well, that was her blessing and that blessing for me.
But you have to go on your faith and what works for you. But I'm an eternal student. So I always, like earlier when we were talking, I said, I'm just going to sit here and watch what you're doing. That's because I'm an eternal student.
Yeah.
I'm never going to be in the presence of anyone that does something that I'm not familiar with or something that I admire or whatever and not learn something. Mm-hmm. I'm going to take listen, I may not ever want to be a pastry chef, but if I'm in a room with pastry chefs and they cooking, I'm going to ask questions and look, because that's just something I want to know.
But this goes back to the young Coco that learns to be a great conversationist, which already gives you a good premise for it, and it doesn't mean that you're ready to get in radio or take, you're not ready to take Oprah or Gail spot. It just means it's a good, welcoming too, because you don't mind talking to everyone.
And I learned, so in radio it was the same thing. I had to learn how to push and pull, how to go slide and all those things. So I remember when I started in radio, and I don't know how my salary leaked or whatever. I don't know how they found out, but I had people that in the process of me coming into radio, and radio was always letting somebody go, and that's what went on.
That's the radio business.
Yeah.
Right now, everybody up in arms about this whole Kevin A. Dale stuff. That's the radio business.
Yeah.
Now, he definitely does some things a lot more odd, but in the grand scheme of things, a radio station will change a format like that.
Oh, they would.
And
listen,
everybody.
It happened to a bunch of my friends that worked out of state. They were at a station that was hip hop and R&B. When they left, they got a call that the station had switched formats. It went to Christian rock. So anyway, I did not go formally to any broadcasting school. Mm-hmm. So I got approached with some people, and they were very angry. And they said, it's people like you that's taking food out of real radio personalities' mouth.
That's hilarious.
So my retort was, well, if the real radio personalities had a personality, couldn't nobody get your job? And I said, I didn't take the job. I was offered the job. But you got to remember.
That's funny. That's the old school snap, but that is funny as hell. If you had a personality, you would be on the radio.
Yeah. So, but in 96, between like 95 and 98, 99, a lot of radio stations were shifting gears, and they started hiring comedians because they wanted to take that whole sterile appeal off and offer some kind of humor and levity and wit. So
I'll throw this out. Another movie I love, but now that you understand more of my mind.
The Petey Green movie.
You already knew. The Talk to Me movie is a classic example of this in a relationship of of Mr. Hughes and Petey Green and how that worked, because you needed to get more forays. This kind of goes back to the vaudeville. We as black people want massive entertainment.
We want it all.
We act like we don't, but I'll tell you another place that you see it, and most of us probably start our performance there, even church. Black church and white church, and I mean many comedians have done these jokes before, but like the black preacher that people love is singing, dancing, prayer worship, moving around. He got to wear different robes. And like,
funny.
If you're not doing that, then people like, I don't feel like giving to the collection plate. He can't just go up there and read a couple scriptures and say, I think that John did this and this is what it meant. That's not going to get a black audience captured. We want, we dealing with enough in life. If you ain't massively entertaining us, we ain't checking for it.
But the other groups have now trickled into that.
Oh yeah, they and that's where they make the most money. Joel Osteen ain't doing nothing but a white man's interpretation of black preaching.
I need you to go to bed.
But I'm being real. I'm being real.
We finna wrap this up.
I'm being real, and I'm not throwing shade on him.
Listen, I know.
I'm just saying, like, if he were black, he'd be probably number 10,000. But him white doing it puts him in a different space, which he's still creative enough to say, okay, let's add this to the production. Let's put my wife in here. Let's do a lot of stuff like that. But if you were to tell me that he was not looking at the T.D. Jakes, the Creflo Dollars, the Reverend Ikes, real school, old school back in the day,
you gotta understand. You gotta understand, Khary. He comes from, a lot of white preachers come from the South. So a lot of their teaching came from the black church.
Yeah.
It came from that. So how do you it's a preacher, and I heard him, and his name is Jesse Duplantis. He's out of Louisiana. And I remember watching him, and he preached a sermon. He said, when I die, I don't want no white folks singing at my funeral. That's what he said. He said, if you can't give me a good clapping, rocking, choir robe, singing choir or whatever, I don't want that. He said, I don't want that. And I'm gonna have to find it on YouTube, but he said that's what he wants. They listen. What's the saying? They like our rhythm, but they don't want our blues.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's
the root of it. So you end up in this space in radio.
I end up in this space in radio. I end up in this space in comedy. There were things that was going so fast. I'm like, wow.
And how are you? I do have this question for others, especially like Josh and Mike Larry and T-Barb and others that I see, even me included. How do you make a decision on which opportunity to take and which opportunity to be like, okay, let me leave that on the table, possibly revisit it? What's your thought process then for it? Because new opportunities are popping up your way. I assume every day people are like, hey, let's make an action figure for Coco. Like,
I get, but see, here's the other part. I get a lot of stuff that I had to filter through because I'm getting offers to do stuff that was very disrespectful to me. And because of my size or whatever, I got offered to do crazy stuff. And I'm like, I'm not going to do that. Well, you a big girl. And if you do it, I said, I'm not going to do that. You and somebody that you know from here was working on a movie. And listen to this. They wanted me to be in the movie. And in the movie, I was supposed to play. It was 2 movies they offered me. In one of the movies, I was supposed to play a woman who found my man cheating on a beach, right? and he was with another woman, and I was supposed to start walking across the beach. And as I walked across the beach, I morphed from being a woman into being like a Godzilla, and I'm supposed to pick my man up and shake him around and kill him. I said, no, sir. He told me, don't you think that would be funny? I said, absolutely not.
How do you, okay, and then as you turn these things down, how do you gracefully do it at a point where, because this is the other part of you turning down an opportunity.
Yeah.
People see, they like, this my life, this my blessing, this Godzilla. You as Godzilla is where I put all my writing into, and this gonna change my family. How do you deal with that?
Sir, I can't do that because I have a brand and a reputation, and that really don't fit the direction that I'm going in. And some people, they try, oh, you could, no, I can't do everything. It was a lot of stuff that got offered to me, and I said, I can't do everything. I got offered to play a female bookman in a movie, and the movie was based on some people that lived in an apartment building, and I was going to be the maintenance person. But I had to be like a female bookman with the coveralls and stuff on. And every time I went to somebody's house, because I would go in people's house and steal food out their refrigerator and all that, I said, yeah. I said, I can't do that because that doesn't fit my image and my brand, and I'm looking for different things. So I was also doing plus size modeling then. I was working for Ashley Stewart and Dietrich Furs and all of that stuff. So I was doing everything. I was hosting parties and doing events, and I was
turning nothing down with your collar.
Listen, and I was working, and I've always enjoyed working. I've always enjoyed what I do. It was very challenging on my social relationship in terms of
that's what I was gonna wonder. What was it like for family and your personal life and friends? Because that's the other thing that I'm learning more and more, and I'm still balancing it. When you go on this path as an entrepreneur, because you're an entrepreneur if you're a comedian, whether you that whole belief, and I try to shake most performers and artists and entertainers that say, I want to do the art and I want somebody else to do the business. Every person that thought that way is not in a good financial situation. So whether you want to do the business or you don't want to do the business, you're going to have to deal with how you go about it. So as far as the whole, even if it's your wife, even if it's your mama, even if it's your daddy, if you in this entertainment thing or artist, you are in business as well.
But it's not just you in the business. Your family,
everybody else.
Yeah, everybody. Your nucleus has just gotten larger because everybody is a whole part of the process.
Yeah.
So it changed things in terms of my daughter, my family, my mother. My mother be like, listen, I don't know what you doing, but I'm tired of people coming up to me asking me, can you do this? And can you get them a shout out on the radio and all of that?
Give them a shout out on the radio.
And because we had flyers and we had cups and we was doing appearances and all of those things. And it's like, whoa, my life changed so much. And a few people knew me when I was a nurse but
then you were still doing comedy shows, but people kind of looked at you in the comedy world, and if they weren't in the comedy world, they didn't really know. The minute you go to broadcast, especially at a station like JLB, morning is the radio time. You immediately go from, even more so than radio is bigger than Def Jam and Comic View, because that's still a niche audience. You're watching it, and people that you saw from Def Jam and Comic View were people that wanted to come to a comedy show. The minute you go to broadcast radio,
it's different.
Now everybody knows.
And here's the thing: I'm in radio, but I'm learning as I go. So the nuances of radio was so different, but I knew how to talk. I knew how to articulate. I knew what was going on. So I've always been an avid reader and a person that read the newspaper and know what's going on. So when Mason would say, what you read about last night? I did so and so and so and so. So I was able to have a healthy dialogue because that was one of the things that I knew how to do. So, but in terms of relationships, I got approached by a lot of guys, and I'm like, what do you want? I'm just, So you have to sift through that. And you have to have a keen knowledge of self. You have to have a keen spirit of discernment, because there were people that were around me that were my friends when I was a nurse and when I was safe. Because I was safe to be their friend back then. they didn't have to worry about people approaching us when we were out in public. I had to get security and all that. All that. I had stalkers, all of that. So I was very safe in this bubble over here. But when my bubble got bigger, I'm not only safe to be around some of my friends, but it was a safety element for my family. It was a safety element for me. So I moved different. I had to be more cognizant of where I went. And I really literally had never thought about having security or personal protection, but I really had to have it. So that changed. And I had read about stalkers, but to actually have one or two or 10, and I was not only stalked by men, I was stalked by women. So it
And then it's tough too when you are a public figure because technically when Coats for Kids happens and you got a stalker, they could come to Coats for Kids with Coats
yeah,
to give 2 kids.
yeah.
And you on stage.
Yeah.
And you still got to be a professional.
Still gotta be a
But you
professional.
got to look at your security guard in a certain way, like.
Yeah. Oh, and listen, they knew what the signal was. They knew if I was out somewhere and I wasn't comfortable, it was certain things that I would do that the other person that's watching me
Don't know
is
nothing.
oblivious, because all women do it, but it was just how I did it. They knew that it was a problem. So in that setting, or I'm hosting a party and, the waitress come up to me, these guys want to buy you a bottle of champagne. I'm like, who? Because I always wanted to say thank you, but I also want to know what you looked like. So my dating changed. I dated some athletes, which was, okay, I'm going to give you one instance about this ball player that played for the Pistons. And, okay, so I was dating somebody.
Josh and me want to say Allen Houston. What else would Josh say? Josh would say Dave Bing. Josh would have said Dave Bing. That's what he'd have said. That's the Josh and me. Shout out, Josh.
Okay, so I would never disclose who this person was, because I dated a few athletes. I dated some cats that played for the Pistons. I dated a few athletes. So what was crazy, he and I had a conversation that I said, listen, if we gonna do this, can't nobody really know that we doing this. And he looked at me kind of crazy, like, what? He said, I'm supposed to be telling you that. I said, no. We both got images to protect. So when he would see me, I was dressed like I'm dressed now. I love novelty T-shirts. I love some sweatpants. I'm gonna be comfortable, and that's just what I'm gonna do. So he always saw me like that. So it was a big event happening in the city, and a big event. And I'm at the event. I'm one of the hosts for the event, and I'm there, and I'm ultra fly, because I didn't have to be fly on the radio, because it wasn't they didn't see me on the air. So I'm at the event, and I'm ultra fly. I didn't pull out all the stops. So he at the event, he come in, everybody announced, for Detroit Pistons, So he's standing at a distance, but he watching me. So he sent one of his folks over to tell me he wanted to talk to me. I said, okay, when I get a break, whatever. So I go over and talk to him, and I'm facing him, and he was like, so what's all that about? Why all them folks in your face? I said, what folks? He said, all the men in your face. I said, that's what I do. I do radio, and I'm a comedian. He was like, well, I don't like it. I said, well, it's folks in your face. He said, yeah, but that's what you do, right? I said, I ain't tripping. And he got mad that I wasn't bothered about all the women in his face that had the little disposable camera that wanted to take a picture. So people started buying me bottles of champagne. So the young lady said, well, the guy over there, I said, okay. So at one point, I'm sitting there with my friends, and I got like 3 bottles of champagne on the table. I'm not finna drink all this. I will open them and pass them out.
Pass it to your people.
Yeah, because and my security was with me, but I ain't finna be, even though I got security with me, I ain't finna be.
This is the other way.
Yeah.
As in public image.
Yeah.
Just because you offered it don't mean you got to do it.
Not
and
at all.
in reality, even me, when I see most people, I'll buy a drink just in support of, at an event, if I go, and I'm gonna be going to Coco's show soon that she got on Thursdays, and I'm gonna buy some liquor most times because I'm supported the venue for supporting the act, because I understand that the venue is bringing this here really to push the bar.
Yeah.
This is all a science and business. It's not like I'm trying to get smashed or see her get smashed or her people get smashed.
And that's
it's almost like, hey, what your people want? You know, you've seen me do that.
I do it.
What your people want?
Absolutely.
I'll buy them whatever just to support the night.
And I do it, but I'm glad you said that, because everything in front of you is not supposed to be eaten or drank. So as a woman, I would never drink all the stuff that was in front of me, because, like I said, even though I had security, I never wanted to get caught with my ass out. Just, I don't want to get up and stumble like. Now I did one time. I'll tell you that, but I got up. I don't want to ever get up, and I'm staggering. So I tell the young lady behind the bar, I said, listen, I said, hold those bottles. I said, and because at this time, I got people that bought me about 8 bottles. So I said, listen, hold the bottles. If I get to them, I'll get to them. I said, you got your. She said, yeah, everybody paid for them. I said, good. I said, you keep that money, and the bottles that I don't drink, I just ain't going to drink them. Mm-hmm. So she made her money. Everybody was good. I'm not going to put myself in that position. So he was in his feelings. So I'm party over. I'm getting ready to leave, and my folks, So I come up to him. I'm like, hey, I'm finna go. He was like, where you going? I said, I'm going home. He said, I'm coming with you. I said, no, you're not. No, we not finna walk out of here together like that. I'm walking out here with security, just like I came in. He was like, for real? I said, yeah. I said, now you know where I am.
Hit me up later.
Yeah. You want me to leave your name at the gate because they could let you in. I said, but we not finna. He said, so you can't walk out with me. I said, don't do that. And I'm talking to him literally like I'm a ventriloquist. I'm like, don't do that.
I just know I know the ego. All of this that you're saying is the ego of men.
That male ego.
This is men ego.
Of course.
Because in reality, he really don't want that either.
Yeah.
But the ego of guys, I debate with, shout out Josh, most times.
That male ego. So
it's strong.
The male ego, but it's fragile. See, the male ego is like a butterfly wing. No, for real. You know how the butterfly, and it morphs, and it's the chrysalis, and the butterfly starts to come out the cocoon. Now, anything you do, if you touch that cocoon, it will impede the butterfly's growth, right? Mm-hmm. But when that butterfly come out, as beautiful and majestic as that butterfly is, if you puncture that wing or damage that wing in any way, that butterfly can't fly.
Hey,
and that's the male ego.
It sure is.
That is the male. If you tamper with that male ego, it's like a butterfly's wing. And y'all damn near like a wounded dog.
You ain't lying. Because like I had this debate, it is so weird because like I sit on both sides of sometimes just offering perspective. But like I tell most of my own boys, it's like you don't even want all that. You acting like you don't want her talking to nobody else and da-da-da. If she came up to your house every day and was over in your face for 8 hours a day after she get off work,
absolutely,
you'd be like, oh, get yourself some business.
Yes.
So it's like, why are you pushing for something that you know
because
you ain't gonna keep up with?
He had at that time, there were certain women in the city that were sought after.
I can tell you this. I'll tell you exactly what I think it is just from knowing dudes.
Okay.
And this happens to a lot of men usually. He's a man, especially with, athlete. He's gotten so much. And now it's like, okay, I got Coco in the mix and everything, and I think I can control this. But then you see your lady get more attention, get more adoration, get more love than you. It wrecks your mind. Like you have it. It's like 1 second, time out. Who am I? Like, is this gonna happen to me?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So let me do something to try to, which usually
divert all of that.
Yeah, where it's like, nah, but Coco, you may be in the NBA, you may have your $1 million contract, but the reality is Coco from the crib, she's a better communicator more than likely, because a lot of athletes, and this is no shade towards athletes, shout out the ones that I love, but a lot of athletes are insulated and not really usually connecting in communication and being as affable, knowing how to present things. Comedians are masters at just knowing how to judge rooms and make people feel a certain way. People meet an athlete and it's like, hey, athlete, like, here go a classic one. And I met him a couple of times. Cool dude, and the cool dude thing, but like in meeting Barry Sanders, and this is no shade to Barry. Barry's a cool, approachable guy. But he's that. He's a cool, approachable guy. So if I'm in a room with Barry Sanders, and rest in peace, downtown Tony Brown,
Right.
I'm going to shake hands with Barry Sanders, take a selfie with Barry Sanders. But eventually it'll be like, all right, Barry, because I know if Tony's around, he's going to be like, oh, man, when I was on and it's like, 1 second, time out. This is entertaining.
But laughter it's a comfort in laughing.
Yeah.
Laughter induces and creates endorphins.
Yeah.
So you feel relaxed when you can laugh and you feel comfortable. So people are drawn to the thing that makes them comfortable.
Yeah.
So for it was a few things that blew his mind.
I'm sure seeing the way you move and and seeing how the rest of the city responds to you, and he's used to walking in rooms and seeing that kind of respond to him.
Yes.
And you have more clout than him in his mind. You know what I'm saying?
And that was an issue. And then he could not. Okay, so I'm just gonna put this out there. There are a lot of men, Khary, that have proclivities for plus size women.
I think that definitely exists.
Yes, and it exists on level. There are a lot of men that have proclivities for plus size women, and because we are still not a part of the accepted sexual
the spectrum of how society presents things in media.
Yes,
it's media.
Yes, and so because myself and other women didn't fit that, he literally was like, he said, so listen, I ain't trying to be funny. He said, but you're a beautiful woman and everything. He said, but everybody love you. Like, we had went and hung out one night and it was a bunch of people hanging out, so it didn't look like I was with him. He was like, people love you. I said, why does that bother you?
Yeah.
He said, because, and like I was finna say, at that time, it was a bunch of women in Detroit, because, Detroit is one of them cities. It's a bunch of men that are sought after, and it's a bunch of women that's sought after. I didn't fit into that role of to be sought after. And, I'm Coco, that's the homegirl or whatever. But for him, it just boggled his mind that I moved the way I moved, and I did the stuff that I did because I'm not supposed to be like that. I'm supposed to be a little more engaging and welcoming and all that. I'm like, man, listen, I'm not going to apologize for me being who I am, because I've had to navigate through this world a long time. But it kind of messed him up. And I found that when I dated other folks that were very well known and prominent, it was basically the same thing.
Oh, yeah, but you have a different level of, and let me say this, as they say, and I actually gave Coco flowers today. But shout out really to the Brazelton family, because I love the Brazeltons and what they do and what that represents in black business. If you know me, Khary connects in black business all the time, and how Mr. Brazelton did a lot of things, like the original owner of the flower shop, down to the son, and rest in peace, Mr. Brazelton. And now the daughter holding it down, but the son, he was like, that was one of my OGs. He gave me an interview before he passed. But I tried to give from Brazelton, just keep it in that circle of it. Right. But like, you're beloved. You're a gem of our community. So it's a different tone, because it's a lot of celebrities, but it's not a lot of people beloved. Like Mama Barnes was beloved.
Absolutely.
Thornetta Performance, she's beloved. Like,
absolutely.
It's like,
it is.
And even when you see celebrities, even Tricky, shout out Trick, like, he's
yeah,
beloved.
Absolutely.
Like, it's like when you're
Mikey Eckstein and all those cats, you feel a sense of connection.
Yeah.
They like your brother or your cousin, or Ali that owns Starters. You just feel you kind of lock into that because they just a part of your social DNA.
Of the culture. And when you move past, so like a celebrity may be larger in celebrity status and people want to meet them. But like, even you can name any celebrity, and I know a group of people would say, what you mean? Like, meaning like, yes, if Beyonce was in a room with a lot of the people we just mentioned, Detroiters would obviously go and rush and take the selfie with Beyonce.
I would.
But then after about 30, 40 minutes, you're going to see people kind of go to the people that's most beloved. And this is no shade towards her celebrity either.
Absolutely.
It's just, I've seen it function in rooms this way. And I've seen also celebrities with larger statuses like get mad that like, don't they know who I am? And it's like,
oh yeah,
we know who
I
you
didn't-
are,
I didn't heard that.
but it
Oh, you don't know
matter.
who I am. I do.
It don't matter who you are, because at the end of the day, we know that they're going to be in Detroit and you going to be in, God knows where you're going to be, but you ain't going to be here. And when something happens here, that's who we going to connect.
These are the people that I'm going to defer to, and I'm going. That's the direction that I'm going in. But for a lot of people, it's kind of hard to, especially when you're a woman and you trying to have a healthy relationship. It's kind of hard to get. So it's the reason why a lot of celebrities, women, date quote unquote regular guys, and so people say, well, you know, Mary J. Blige and Kendu. Kendu was in the record business and all that, but he wasn't.
He wasn't puffy or
and when I
like
first
that.
met Kendu, he had long locks, and once he started dating Mary, because you know he was vocal in that, like and he cut his locks out or whatever. And he handled what he had to handle. You know, I watched him one day. Mary was performing, and he was doing the sound and making sure everything was in order. But it's women we date men that we're comfortable with, and sometimes it's not an entertainer. Same thing with Kelly Price and her husband and other women. You want a man that could be comfortable with who you are, but sometimes you can't stop a weed from growing. So I see myself as a beautiful weed. And it's nothing that you could do. I don't care what you do in the garden. Sometimes that weed gonna pop up. And you gonna say, listen, I'm gonna leave you here because you keep showing up. You strong, you pushing through the concrete. You may be supposed to be here. And a lot of times in my dating, it's been, they date me, but they don't want me to go any further than where I am.
And see, that's one of the toughest things where I do tip my hat to the brothers that have stood there, like the Pastor Bob was with Orthea and towards her passing. Like, because you're gonna have to know that you're sharing the intimacy of your relationship. Like, you know, you can't go, if me and you go to I don't know, any place, like we go to Starters, I'm gonna be sharing the space. So you're going to have to share with the general public, but also know when to tell the general public, look, it's going to be no pictures right now, gracefully.
Yeah.
You know, and you also have to be willing to, and I mean, I guess I'm kind of in that same space where people be like, man, you light up when you do interviews and all that stuff, but you drain. Like, I have to share the downtime when you are tired.
Yes.
When it is a little bit of restlessness.
Absolutely.
And then you're going to have to be like, wow, when I saw you on radio with Mason, you was,
I would get all of that.
I have to be willing to be patient and have the bandwidth to understand that, you know what, in the role, I'm going to be the rock for what it is, and I'm a part of the full journey.
But who wants to hear that you have a role or a position?
But that's
the
reality of life, though.
I understand.
That's the reality of life.
But in any relationship, you have a role and a position.
I agree.
But who wants to hear that it's a role or a position? I remember times when I would go out to dinner. I'm like, okay, we're going out to dinner. I went out to dinner one time, and I kept telling the person that was asking me out to dinner, I said, I'm really allergic to seafood. It was a seafood restaurant. I said, I can eat fish, but I can't eat anything. I can't eat shrimp, lobster, crab, anything in a shell. Crustaceans, mollusks, whatever. And he was determined to go to this restaurant on a Sunday evening, and it was banging. So we get there, and I learned that sometimes people want to dim your light too. That's another thing. So we come in, we sitting there, and you know, people, hey Coco, what you doing? So all of that's going on. So he already looking like he peed off. So the young lady that was the hostess, she said, "Can I ask you?" She said, because she had told him it was gonna be a 45 to an hour wait, and she said, "Can I talk to you for a minute? Can I ask you a question?" So I go up there. She was like, "Is your name Coco?" I said, "Yes, it is." She said, "Okay, just give me a minute." So in about 10 minutes, she came back, and she said, "Y'all table is ready." So he was like, "What?" I said, "Sure." So we get to the table, and walking to the table. Hey, that's Coco. Da 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 da. Girl, what you doing here? Blah 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 blah. Da da da. So you got all this banter going on. So by the time he sat down, he was so agitated.
Yeah.
So, cause when we sat down, drinks started coming.
Yep.
And no, the server came over and said, what are you all drinking? If some people want to buy you some drinks. Mm-hmm. So he was like, huh? What? So, and the drinks kept coming.
Yeah.
And so I told her, I said, I don't need nothing else to drink. Mm-hmm. So that, he was peed off because of that. Mm-hmm. He was peed off because of the hostess that did what she did. When people started coming up to me, I know you eating, but can you sign? And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And then the fact that I'm allergic to shellfish, so the server had to tell her manager, and he in turn had to go into the kitchen and tell the manager in there. So they had to go to print out a whole separate menu, because even though stuff might not have been shellfish, but they still used lobster sauce to cook it. So after we left, and on the way home, he didn't say nothing.
Yep.
I said, what's the problem? That's some shit. I said, why? I can't go nowhere with you. I'm in there trying to do so and so and so and so. Everybody in your face. And then I said, what we not gonna do? We not.
Time out. When she sleeps with that, she slept with that with me. She getting in the zone. She getting in the zone. But you don't want Coco to hit you with what we not gonna do.
And I was cool. I was like, what we not gonna do? We not finna do this. I said, sir, you didn't have to spend money on drinks. Mm-hmm. I said, you didn't have to wait 45 minutes to an hour to get a table. And it was a good experience. No, I can't be doing that. Cause see, and it was the more and more I learned about the male ego.
And I was gonna say all of that was ego. So
that's that vibrato. That's that vibrato.
We gonna close out, and this been overtime because we didn't even get to the house of comedy.
We gonna come back, part 2.
We gonna do a part 2, but I do got the classic Detroit is different questions before we go there.
Okay.
First one. Mm-hmm. Very first car, year, make, and model, year you got it.
Man, my own car that I bought myself.
Just car, period.
Okay. Oh my goodness. Dang. Okay. I had a Chevy Citation.
What is a Chevy Citation?
It's a car. It was a Chevy, and everybody
they named the car a Citation.
Yeah, it was a Citation.
Who was in the engineering room with to name a car a Citation?
Yes, it was. So dig. This is the crazy part about the car. The car. No. Okay, the Chevy Citation, but the floor on the passenger side and all of them rotted out.
Okay.
Every single one.
What in the Flintstones was going on?
It was just a bold car.
Okay.
And I had a friend, he put sheet metal and welded it and did all of that to the car. It was a Chevy Citation.
Okay.
And it would get flooded, and I would have to pop the trunk and open the butterfly, and I kept a little bit of gasoline in the gas can, and you open the butterfly and put a drop of gas on the carburetor in there, and it would turn right over.
Hilarious.
A Chevy Citation. I had an old...
Wait, let's just stick with that.
Okay.
Where was the first place you drove with your Chevy Citation?
I went to see The Color Purple.
Wow.
At the movie theater. And me and my daughter's godmother, shout out to Dina, we were stopped near Livernois and Ewald Circle. And I looked in my rearview mirror and I said, this guy going real fast. He gone. And by the time I took my foot off the brake and put on the gas to move, the guy hit us. He hit us in the Chevy Citation.
Well, you got in an accident the first time with the ride.
I got in an accident, and he got out and looked at us and was like, y'all okay? And just jumped back in his car and pulled off.
I love my people.
Yeah.
I love my people.
Yeah. So, sir, if you hit...
if
you hit two women in a Chevy Citation on Livernois and Ewald Circle,
when the day The Color Purple came off, time out. And then I really love my people because he said, y'all okay. He didn't even ask. He implied.
He looked at us. He looked at us and said, oh, y'all all right. And he just got in his car and irked off. Like,
no no insurance.
None of that.
Y'all okay?
So my Chevy Citation had a dimple in the bumper. It was.
So did y'all still go to the Color Purple?
We had went to see it. We was on our way home.
Okay.
We was on our way home.
So, all right, next question.
Yes.
You're the DJ at the end of the fireworks, Woodward and Jefferson. You get to play 2 songs.
Okay.
What 2 songs are you playing?
I've been so many places in my life and time, and I've sung a lot of songs. And I made some bad rhymes. Donny Hathaway. A song for you. And
Barnes' favorite song.
Yes, and I always tell my family when I make my transition, I want that song sang very well at my funeral. That's one of my favorite songs, and another one of my songs that is part of my thumbprint is Drifting on a Memory. I was in love with a pimp when that song came out. For the Lover and You by the Isley Brothers.
Okay.
We'll talk about that on part 2 that I was in love with a pimp.
Ron Isley.
And I was like 13 or 14. And he never did nothing to me or nothing like that, but he was related to one of my family members, and he was a real live pimp. Like, he wore a rabbit coat and with a leather belt and a press and curl and all that. Okay, yeah, that's this.
He did not make it to Chinchilla.
No. He had finished pimping by then.
I'm retired.
He had finished pimping and got his life together.
Okay. Gave it up to Christ.
He was a real live pimp. He had a black young lady work for him and another one. Yeah.
So, last question.
Okay.
If you could rename Woodward after one Detroiter, or really, we're going to say Highland Parker, who would it be and why?
After one Detroiter in Highland Park. Or the Woodward in Detroit. No, the Woodward in Highland Park.
Yeah, let's say the Woodward in Highland Park.
Oh, man. I would name it after myself.
I like it.
I would name it after myself.
Actually, you know what? Detroit is different. We can make a charge for that. Detroit is different, so that would be from the start, that stretch of Woodward.
From 6 Mile all the way down to Tennyson.
That right there is actually something that I think we could get a lot of push and support for. I like that, and I think it would be so culturally grounded around what HP really represent and love. And then a lot of times people disconnect the whole concept that Woodward runs through HP too.
Does.
I like it.
I would really like it to be my last name, Walton. Just and I know it's Waltons all over the whatever, but we would have a name. But I feel like because that part of Woodward played a huge part in me being the person that I am sitting right now doing the Detroit is Different, having a whole conversation. So, Hamilton, Woodward, all of those streets are a part of my DNA. How many times I caught the Woodward bus going somewhere downtown?
The 53.
Oh, baby.
The good old 53.
Listen.
It's a lot of culture on the 53.
Oh, it was a lot of everything. And then I had a friend that used to drive to Woodward. So I would park my car and get on the bus with him and ride up and down Woodward. And we would just talk and have conversations. And people would get on the bus like, Coco, what you doing on the Woodward bus? Because this when I was who I am, I said, I'm riding on the bus with my buddy. They was like, what? And I'll be sitting on the bus.
She is getting material, my friend.
And people would, and that's what people say. You on this bus getting material. I said, no, I'm really on the bus. 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, you on the Woodward bus, and they go to State Fair, and you do the turnaround and come back downtown.
You were getting a lot of material, whether you are a comedian or not.
Baby, let me tell you something. It's a whole different world. It was a whole, listen, I had a whole screenplay in my head.
A screenplay?
It was a guy used to be on the bus. His name was King David. And I said, what's your name? He be like, King David. I said, and his first name was really King.
Hilarious.
David.
Hilarious.
And he always had on a whole bunch of jewelry. He was like, I could have a car if I wanted a car. I said, okay.
Hilarious.
King David.
Hilarious. Now that he sounds like somebody. Hey, if we ever find King David, he's definitely welcome to come on Detroit is Different, because just that adoration alone, I'm pretty sure he has an interesting story to share.
Oh, baby, listen. He had a whole man. I'm gonna leave that alone.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. Peace be. And part 2 will be coming. And the part 2 with Keith Bennett. So this is going to be fun. Peace.
Detroit is Different is where you get information, artistry, history, music, and even comedy. Detroit is different, a home for the culture of Detroit. Visit online at DetroitisDifferent.com today.